Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order, please. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to our July business meeting. It's July 13th, 2015. For the record, Mrs. Griffin, can you note in the record that Mr. DeRosa is absent due to an illness, so he will not be here tonight. And I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Fieser for introductions.
Thank you, Mrs. Lennon. I'm delighted to be here this evening. One, we haven't met in a month. I missed you. But on a serious note, I'm thrilled to be introducing two new staff members. I'm going to begin with the new Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Mr. Jeffrey Burt. Jeff, who is in the front row here with the green tie. You had all received some information on Jeff. I believe he's been in education for 23 years, I think it is, Jeff? Approximately, who's counting? But, you know, has had multiple roles from teacher, a number of years as a teacher of social studies and high school assistant principal, the equivalent of our supervisor of 7-12 social studies in Fairfield, as well as technology, K-12, I believe it was, and then most recently as the assistant superintendent in Vernon. So we're thrilled to have him. He's going to be joining us right at the first week of August, and can't wait for him to come on board. It'll be really good. So this is the board, and I think you've met most people, but maybe some people you have not. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves. I know you did, Dr. Heidi Goldworken, but I know Mrs. Federico.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jen Federico. Nice to meet you. Sorry I couldn't be here earlier to meet with you beforehand, but it's great to meet you now. And welcome to Milford.
Thank you very much.
Mike and Anthony.
Oh, Mike DeGrego, Mr. Burt's met you already. Good luck. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Anthony Pacelli, good luck and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And I also want to give a shout out of thanks to Arlene Gottesman, who was next to Jeff Burt, because Arlene is the interim assistant superintendent. And I can't tell you how excited I am that she's here. The thought of not having someone, you know, when Mr. Cummings left was just pretty frightening given all that's going on this summer. But there are many of you that may know Ms. Gottesman. She was principal at Law High School for 6 or 7 years? 7 years. So very familiar with the community. And so that was one of the reasons why it was like, oh my gosh, if she could come on board and help us out, just because she knew the school system and so could jump into things very quickly. And she has been just invaluable in the short time that she's been with us. And she will be with us through August. And I know that she and Mr. Burt have already met for a solid hour themselves talking. I'm not sure, maybe they talked about me, I don't know. But again, thank you so much. And then the second person hire that we want to introduce, who is not a stranger by any means to any of you, is Jeffrey Nielsen, who you know as former police officer, Lieutenant Jeffrey Nielsen, or Sergeant, I'm sorry, and who has come over to our side, and we're absolutely thrilled. He is the new coordinator, safety and security coordinator for the district. He's been on board now for a week and a half, is it? A little bit, maybe 6 days?
A few days.
Okay. And is already very much involved in taking on the role, and is very excited to be working with us, and we are thrilled to have him. You know, he is going to be responsible for security across the system, all buildings, you know, district-wide, and that includes not only what goes on in the buildings with respect to the administrators and the safety committees that are in each of the schools and all of the the drills, et cetera, but also, with facilities, with infrastructure kinds of things, with incidents that may occur, with working with Kathy Benetti in terms of, if there's information that has to go out to parents, et cetera. Certainly working with data that has to be collected and then sent to the state, and more, much more. But so we're just really thrilled that he is here. And the interesting thing is that in talking with Chief Mello, he talked about the loss to him, but at the same time the gain, because someone in the schools that has his expertise, it's invaluable for the police department as well. And actually, I believe will ease their burden in as far as the schools themselves. So really welcome you, Jeff. Really
Welcome. I didn't recognize you without your uniform.
I know.
That's what I assumed. I know who's that person. His face looks familiar.
I have a spare one, I can always bring it back.
And there is a third person that I wanted to introduce, but I didn't know he was here till just this minute, and that is one of our new assistant principals at East Shore High School, middle school, East Shore, and that's Donato Pacelli, who is sitting here in the white shirt and tie next to Shannon Carlson. Donato was a social studies teacher at West Shore for a long time.
7 years.
7 years, and was in the district before that. So he's joining Kathy Williams at East Shore, is already getting his feet wet, working full-time, and we are delighted to have him be a part of the administrative staff. So great to have you here, Donato. That's terrific.
Thank you for coming. Very good. Okay.
Okay then.
All right, that's it for the introductions. Very good. All right, we have public comment time. Is there anybody here who'd like to address the board this evening? If so, I'll read the public comment statement. No public comment? Okay, then I'll forego with reading the statement, and we'll move on to the chair's report. Do we have any liaison reports tonight? Yes, Ms. Federico?
I have a report from the Permanent Schools Committee. The Permanent Schools Committee met on July 8th and 9th for the purpose of interviewing architects for upcoming projects. We interviewed 5 firms, and we are in the midst of our selection process. So once that process has been completed, I'll update the board on the final selection.
Very good, thank you. Any other liaison reports? I know it's summertime, there's not usually anything. Okay. I just want to remind the board that we have no committee of the whole meeting this month. We have Dr. Thieser's evaluation on the next Monday. We're going to start at 6:15. We'll let you know where. It'll be here in the building someplace. And then we don't have another business meeting until August 24th. So we get a little bit of a break unless something comes up and we need a special meeting for something. And then the only other thing I wanted to bring up to the board is that we had last year when the last time we looked at the transportation policy in the fall, we had some conversation about revisiting the walking distance when we have our next transportation update, which will be this coming September, I believe it'll be. So I wanted to get just a yes or no consensus from board members to see, if we have a consensus that we want to have a conversation about reducing any of the walking distances to qualify for a bus. And if we have a consensus, then we'll direct administration to do a little work around that. So
I know that in my district there was a lot of concern, and I think that it should come up.
okay. You gonna keep track? All right. Mr. DeRego?
I don't see what, I guess so, sure, that's fine. A little discussion.
Okay. Mrs.
Okay.
Ms. Tobias?
I am a no for
Okay.
changing the distance, and just in case it matters to anybody, John DeRosa also wanted me to pass on that he's also a no.
Okay, all right. I'm willing to at least just discuss it, so I would be, I guess, a yes. Mr. Sadi?
I'm going to be a no at this point, thank you.
Mr. Wiskinen?
Not interested.
Ms. Federico?
I absolutely think that we should look at it. I have some serious concerns about
Just
the
a yes or a no?
distances. Yes. Well, they were statements from the other
Oh.
side. So I wanted to
Mrs.
say
I'm sorry,
yes.
Dr. Goldworkin?
No.
Mrs. Casey?
Yes.
Yes? So how many yeses do we have? It's even?
Mm-hmm.
All right, if it's even, then I'll say that that's enough of a consensus that we You know, if it was heavily weighed one way or the other, then I would say to go that way. But since it's a kind of split down the middle, I think we should at least have the conversation. So given that, just we need to give administration some direction as to what? Whoa, you okay?
Yeah, thank you.
What we might want them to look at in terms of what kind of reduction. For instance, you know, do we want to, you know, say that we'll have elementary school a mile and then middle and high school be a mile and a half or something like that. They need to know what they should be looking at in terms of coming up with some parameters and some, it is a budgetary issue, so there's going to be.
Right.
So for those who were a strong yes, have you thought about that at all in terms of what?
Not details like that, but you know, we should, you know, shrink it down just a little bit.
Shrink down a little bit?
Shrink it down somewhat, yeah, depending upon, you know, because I know there was a lot of concern from the public, especially those at the time when we had all that last year. I think it was about this time last year. There was a lot of concern with the walking distances and today's day and age. You know, with things happening and such. Maybe shrinking it down a bit. I don't know specifically. Is it 2 mile walking distance right now?
Right now, yes. It's 2 miles for high
For high
school,
school.
mile and a half for middle school, and a mile for elementary school.
Maybe knock it back a little bit, you know, to 1.5 miles and then a mile and something to that effect.
Okay. Ms. Federico?
Yeah, I would agree with looking at a mile and a half for high school and a mile for middle school.
So 1 mile for middle and elementary?
Yes.
Did you have any ideas, Mrs. Casey?
I think 1.5 miles is reasonable for middle and high school, and I would keep it at 1 mile for elementary.
Okay. Does that give you enough of an idea, Mr. Richatelli, or do you want us to be more specific?
Well, I heard 2 people say 1.5 miles for high school. The only difference is, do you want 1 mile for middle school or 1.5 miles for middle school?
So how much extra work would it be to do both?
Not that
Need
much
you
more.
both?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, really what it comes down to is, it's, as you said, it's budgetary. And how much is it going to cost to do that? So now, would you be looking at the September meeting or the October meeting?
Well, if we're going to do a policy change, we need 2 readings. So I would ask if you could have it ready for September. Is that possible to have it ready for the September meeting, or will that be very difficult to do?
It'll be difficult, and the reason for that is, as you, obviously,
Okay.
the obvious is that all of the elementary schools are completely new runs that
Right.
we're building now.
This is true. All right. So would board members, would you object to if we put this on the October business meeting and then we can do a second reading at the October Cal meeting? Would that be okay? Does that, Dr. Fieser, does that sound feasible?
If you're talking about the policy being brought in October, I think it's premature before the board gets the information brought forward. That's what you're talking about, that the information wouldn't be brought forward until October. So the policy would be subsequent to the decision making. Modifying the policy is not a major piece. It's because it would be changing the mileage piece. It's the decision making, the dialogue decision making. So what I'd like to suggest is that if the business meeting of October, if that's when the information was brought forward, if it appears as if the board is going to be ready to make a decision at the committee of the whole meeting, for example, in October, we could then be ready with a policy change if need be. But to bring it in October before there's any discussion.
Well, I guess my thought was just to simply have it on the agenda so that, as a first reading, so that we could then
What would the first reading be? Because you've asked us to do different scenarios.
Well, I guess generically just changing the mileage. I mean, we're not bound to have 2 readings for a policy. We can do them in one. So if you're more comfortable with that, then I'd like to try to get it wrapped up by the end of October.
Sure.
So we can do it that way then. We'll have the information available at the October meeting and then we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Federico.
Through you to administration, I would just like to ask if we could, in the information, just have the total number of walkers as well? I don't think that's any additional work, we probably have that available, right?
The current ones we will.
Okay.
And then we should be able to project how many there will be
Okay.
with the policy change.
Okay,
We
I'm
should
just
be
trying to
able
get a
do
sense
that.
of the proportion that would be affected, so if we have the total, that would be helpful.
All right. Any other questions about that? Okay. All right, then I have nothing further for the chair's report, so I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Feaser.
Thank you. We're going to begin this evening with a brief presentation on the new standardized testing. And actually, I've asked Dr. Jack Hammer, who is a chemistry teacher at Foreign High School, to join me. So he and I are going to do this presentation and then open up for questions. There's no performance results going to be shared tonight because we don't have any. But we really thought it was important to start to talk a little bit about what can be expected when the scores come out. So I'm going to come over here because I'm joining Dr. Hammer. And I think all of you have copies of the presentation in front of you. And are there copies for the public? Yes. No. I don't have any for the public.
Yes.
Dr. Feaser, when do you expect the results to come out?
We haven't been told yet. We're assuming August, but we're expecting that it'll be the end of August. We haven't been told by the state definitively when they're coming. So.
And what about the science, CMT, and
Same thing.
Same thing.
We just haven't been. I don't know if those are all coming at the same time. We really don't know. So in light of actually the question by Dr. Heidi Rode-Borken, in a month or so, again, we don't know definitively, we will receive the results on Connecticut's new standardized assessment. And you know, one of the things that I know that staff across the school system, I know some students, parents, there's some anxiety because it's just this unknown. We don't know what the scores are going to be, you know, how the assessment is going to be scored, how it's going to be reported out. We know some, but not in detail, et cetera. So what we wanted to do this evening is to start to address a little bit of that, knowing that there's anxiety, and to answer the question of, well, what's to be expected, because this is literally a brand new assessment. So part of our presentation, what we're going to zero in on this evening, is that, you know, that there is really, and we've talked about this many times over, there is a radical shift that has occurred in the standards in Connecticut, which is influencing then the assessment that our students took in the springtime. That the concept and goal of college and career readiness for every student in every public school in Connecticut is really a goal, and there's this sense of urgency of wanting to make sure that our kids will be college and career, and we'll speak to that. That the new standardized assessment, which is our Smarter Balance, we call it the SBA, it's the Smarter Balance Assessment. We want to talk about what, again, does it measure? You've heard some about this, but we're going to refresh that a little bit, and why it's so different, and why it cannot be compared to the CMT and the CAP assessment. And then why, in all honesty, a decline in performance is expected. The decline meaning if you compared, which we can't compare, but if you just looked at, well, how do kids do on the CMT and CAP, and then how do they do on the Smarter Balance, and the fact that it will appear as if there's this decline in performance. So let's talk about expectations here. There's a huge shift in expectations with the new assessment. Previously, with the CMT and the CAP, what was looked for was that kids would be proficient. I'm using proficiency here not in relation to proficiency on the CMT. I'm using proficient from the perspective of, you know, that kids would, there was a standard at each of the grade levels that kids were expected in. The idea was did students, the skill set that they were able to exhibit, was it equivalent to the grade level that they were in? That was basically it for the CMT and the CAT. What you will see is that what is coming forward with the new standards and the new assessment, it's far more than kids being on grade level. It's college and career readiness, and we're going to talk about that. So it's preparedness for kids when they leave high school to literally be able to be successful in careers and in high school. That was not part of CMT and CAP. That's not to diminish the CMT and CAP, it just simply was not part of it. That was not the expectation on those tests. So why the shift in expectation? This is, there have been many reports that have been written about the new standards, but this is from Achieve. And if you look, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but you see college and career readiness is central to this. Do you want to hit that? If you see what is emphasized here, too many students graduate from high school without academic skills necessary for success in college careers. The state of Connecticut is now measuring this. They're looking at in the state universities, for example, all kids in Connecticut who go on to the state universities, how many of them need remedial courses? You know, how well prepared are they? How many kids are dropping out? How many years are kids taking to move through college, et cetera? They didn't do that 10 years ago. They didn't do that 20 years ago when the CMT and CAP ran. They're doing it now. Focus on college and career readiness. And quite frankly, every state that has adopted the new standards, the Common Core standards, that's what the focus is, that's what the goal is of the new standards, is that students would be college and career. What you need to know, and you do already know this, Common Core was adopted 5 years ago. Quite honestly, as far as standards go, it was the most significant change in 30 years in this state. 30 years, that's a long time. And so when we talk about this being a radical shift, this is part of what this radical shift is. These standards are much more rigorous. Their expectations are very much higher, and some of that you've seen. You know, some of you have had the opportunity to do the practice SBA test. You know, you've seen some of the curricular pieces. You know, you've heard from Lisa Swanson and from Jen Sinnall in terms of what the expectations are in language arts and mathematics, et cetera. What is being required of kids, far deeper thinking and much more rigorous learning in the classroom in order for them to meet the standards. So this is an idea, you know, just to give you an idea of, you know, the goal, the trajectory is from kindergarten on up. This is the goal, is college and career readiness. There is a recognition that not all kids are going to make it immediately, as simply as that trajectory showed, that there's going to be kids who are going to need some support. And so when they fall below whatever that trajectory is, kindergarten, second, fourth, sixth, that they would be given extra support, and part of that is the whole, you know, scientifically research-based interventions that we've talked about, that we're putting in place. Actually, we have them to be put in fully in place at the elementary, and we're working on them in the middle and the high school. But again, it's with the idea is the goal is college and career readiness for every kid. And so you need to think about that when we think in terms of what the new state assessment is going to be, because again, that's that major shift that was not in place before. The new standards, Connecticut's core standards, they define learning expectations for every grade level. By the end of grade 5, a student will be able to, and very specifically articulate in language arts and in mathematics. And if you may recall, when Jen Sinnall and when Lisa were here, they talked about some of the major shifts that have occurred in those standards that are impacting curriculum. For example, literacy, the major shift is towards more nonfiction reading. And kids being able to work with nonfiction texts and being able to develop positions, do argumentative writing, et cetera, based upon those nonfiction tests. That's a huge shift than what had been in place. In the CMT and the CMT, it was primarily pieces of literature. 8th grade, kids had to do a persuasive piece of writing, but there wasn't a huge emphasis on nonfiction. Now, kindergarten all the way on up, it's really kids being able to be familiar with text. And you might say, well, why the shift? Because most of the reading that we do as adults, ask yourself, in our jobs, it's all nonfiction. Unless we're reading, for a publisher and we're doing, proofreading for pieces of literature. It's nonfiction. So that's part of the issue of kids being able to read that kind of text. Again, in the specific areas, those standards shape the curriculum. So we've done a lot of revisions, as you well know, to our curriculum and content, and then the curriculum gives shapes to the instruction that's going on in the classroom. And then as a result of the standards, you have a new standardized assessment. The old assessment, CMT and CAPT, even science, does not parallel with the new Common Core standards. So a new assessment had to be developed. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hammer and have him pick up here. Okay? Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so first I just want to say I don't come here very often. It's an honor to be here. And it's not an easy act to follow after Dr. Fieser leads off. We wanted to make clear that the standards, you hear this phrase sometimes among fellow educators, the standards are not the curriculum. And this is to sort of, it's reassuring in that the standards they don't prescribe how we as teachers have to teach. There's still a tremendous amount of flexibility in how we get the content across. And so it's up to us as a district to establish the curriculum and then teachers to deliver the curriculum and use their creativity in myriad ways. There are some real significant impacts that these new standards are having. As I mentioned, there's a large, because the standards have shifted, the curriculum has had to change in response to that. I can tell you as a teacher myself that there's quite a learning curve. It requires a different approach in many areas, and teachers have to stay flexible and be able to learn new things ourselves in order to deliver the curriculum so that the kids meet the standards for each grade level. It certainly does demand a lot. Not that students have been thinking hard and been deeply engaged in learning well before the new standards came on the scene. There's been excellent teaching and learning going on for a long time, but there's just, the standards have put kind of a little different spin on some of the learning that's going on, and I think teachers are a little bit more aware of when students are really deeply engaged, and are we challenging the students to reach those higher order thinking skills and to be using their all their cognitive facilities, analysis and critical thinking and so on. And so in order to measure how the students are doing, that's where the new standardized assessment comes in. So now I'd like to, we get to the real central part of the presentation, which is the new assessment itself. Connecticut is part of the Smarter Balance Consortium, and so we refer to this new assessment as the Smarter Balance Assessment, or SBA. To be more specific, this new assessment, as it's measuring how the students are doing against the standards, there's some new things. We didn't used to emphasize speaking and listening as much as we do now. We asked the students to, since information is so readily available these days, we are trying to get them to evaluate what's available on the web or in the library. So there's myriad sources of information. We want our students to be good consumers and critical thinkers when it comes to researching a topic. Data analysis is something that, that's all part of trying to evaluate arguments, whether they're a literary argument or a scientific argument. We want our students to be able to use data when available and build arguments from that, and then communicate their reasoning. So, maybe in the old days, in a math class, when you're dividing a 3-digit number by a 2-digit number, you follow the algorithm, right? And that's, how I learn. But nowadays, with the new standards, we're asking the students to actually maybe express or explain how they got their answer, to make sure that they have that deep conceptual understanding. And then I already addressed the having students use evidence to support their claims. So all of this adds up to, I must say, higher expectations on the students. And so, as Betty has already mentioned, college and career readiness, that's a phrase that you hear over and over. And, we want students, no matter who they are, where they are, by the time they're seniors in high school, we would like them to be in a position to succeed in a college or in a challenging career. Whether or not they want to do it, that's their choice. But as educators, we want them to have those options when they get to be at the end of high school. So again, preparedness versus proficiency. As Dr. Fieser already mentioned, comparing SBA to the CMT and CAP, it's apples and oranges. It's a complete, SBA is a very different animal, and I'll try to walk you through that a little bit. The measurement is different. Whereas CMT and CAP used to be a paper and pencil test, the SBA assessment is a computer-based test. One of the phrases that you'll hear is computer adaptive test, and maybe during the Q&A, if you have any questions about what that means, we can certainly go into detail about that. But it's taken on the computer. The students have to be fluent in using the computer interface. What's being assessed is different, as I mentioned on the last slide. For English, language arts, and literacy, these are the 4 broad areas that are evaluated on the SBA. And I won't read this to you, but I just wanted you to see the 4 major areas under what we call ELA, English, language arts, and literacy. Mathematics, these are the big 3, concepts and procedures, problem solving, modeling, data analysis, and then again, communicating reasoning. It's not enough just to get to the right answer. We would like students, by the time they're in high school certainly, to be good at expressing how they went about solving a problem, what was important during the process, and be able to convey that to another student. Let's see. Okay, so the scoring ruler. Okay, so the scale is going to be different. Those of you who are used to seeing reports sent out at the end of the summer for CMT or CAP, you may remember there's a numerical scale that is kind of usually in the hundreds. Well, SBA, it's in the thousands. Okay, so it's kind of like, we're giving free points to the students to get them started. So the scoring, the scale is going to look different, okay? And then the results will certainly look different. And I'm going to show you, I'll kind of walk you through what you're going to see when the scores come out for the students. So first of all, there are 4 levels, 4 achievement levels. And now if you recall, on the CMT and CAPT, it used to be 5 levels, right? But now it's 4. And the language that's used by SBA, for example, if the student is at the highest achievement level, that means that the student has exceeded the grade level expectation. Okay, so they're doing great. They are right on target and more for being college ready by the time they're seniors in high school. A 3 is just fine. If your child gets a 3 on one of the 2 areas, English language arts or mathematics, that means that they are on the trajectory. They're doing just fine. 2, nearly met. 1 not yet met. And then there's more language to kind of, you know, get a little more detail around this. So if it's a 4, what that means, like if this is the mathematics result, it means that students have, they're demonstrating mastery of the knowledge and skills required of mathematics for that grade level. And if it's a 3, that means they're demonstrating progress toward mastery, okay? So it's a, you know, subtle difference in language, but they're still doing okay. If they get a 2, the language used is they require further development. Okay, so it's like the kid who fell off the staircase a little bit and needs the trampoline to kind of get back on track. And a 1 just means that they need more. They're going to need more support, more substantial improvement in order to achieve mastery. Now, to break it down by grade level a little bit, there are some subtle differences. For grades 3 through 5, if they get a 3 or a 4, the language is the same in both cases. In terms of the level of preparation toward college and career readiness, if you're a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grader, it just means that you're likely to succeed in the next grade. So you're a little, you know, college is a little ways off. So we're looking at, you know, we're hoping you're on track to do well in the next grade. And then if it's a 2, you're going to need some support. If it's a 1, you'll need substantial support. Okay, so it's similar to the last slide. Now for the middle schoolers, grades 6 through 8, a 3 or a 4 indicates likely success in high school and college coursework or career training. So already they're at the middle school level, we're kind of looking to see, are we on the right glide path toward college readiness, okay? And then here's the verbiage for 1 and 2. You guys have this in your, do you have hard copies of this?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Okay, all right. I don't want to belabor this too much. And then in high school, it's the 11th graders currently who are taking the SBA. And so now 3 or 4 is indicating likely success. Now, you know, if you hit a 3 or a 4 on mathematics or ELA as a junior in high school, you know, they're saying that child is very likely to succeed. They're going to be ready. Whereas if you're a 2, you're going to need some support. And if you're at a 1 as a junior in high school, you know, they're being honest. They're saying you're probably going to need a lot of help to be successful in college. Now, a sample report. The reports, the state has provided some facsimiles of the kind of report that we should be seeing when the results are finally released. And they look somewhat similar to the CMT and CAP results. So there should be some familiarity there. And just to kind of walk you through, this is the only part of the report that I'll mention. So for example, here's a student who is they've achieved a level 4 on the ELA literacy assessment. And so that means they exceed the achievement level, and so you'll see these 3 bar graphs. The top bar pertains to the student, the individual student for whom the report, you know, is designed. And you can see here it goes level 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see the bar for that student. It just crosses the threshold into level 4, and so that student is deemed exceeds on the ELA result. And then to put it in context, the second bar is going to show you the school average. So for the average of all the students that took that exam, that's their average, and then the district average. Okay, so if it's a high school, that would be law and foreign averaged together. If it's, you know, elementary school, it's all the elementary schools. And then down here, I'll let you read that yourself, but it breaks it down, the ELA, into the 4 components. How did they do in each of those 4 components? The next slide, just to show you a kind of a comparison. Here's a student who achieved a level 2 in ELA, and so you can see the bar for that student. The top bar is in the second band, and then you can see where they fell short and where they did okay. Okay, so So this is the exciting thing, right? What can we expect? Nobody knows. So it's pretty cool. Nobody likes a lot of uncertainty, and I guess to help districts manage this uncertainty during the waiting period, Connecticut's provided some statistics, some data analysis to give us a rough feel for what we might expect. So they're sharing with us the results of the 2014 field test. So a year ago in the spring, they did this field test, and they've collected those data, analyzed them, and compared them with some other assessments to give us some context. Specifically, the most important comparison that they made between the SBA field test and another assessment was the NAEP. I guess people call it the NAEP. And so let me tell you about the NAEP, if you haven't heard of that. It's a really important assessment. It's something that's really good to know about. It stands for the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And sometimes it's referred to informally as the nation's report card. So I don't know, maybe on the news or on the radio, sometimes if you've heard about the nation's report card and assessment results, that's the organization. It is considered to be one of the most trusted, validated yardsticks for comparing how different states are doing versus each other. So that's very valuable. It's administered. Here's just a few other, trivia. It's administered every 2 years. It's only administered to grades 4, 8, and 12. Typically about 30 students per grade, per school are selected. Students are selected using a so-called stratified representative sampling, so that the data set that they get is representative of the demographics and the students that live in that state. It's been administered since the early 90s. All right, so let's get down to the some numbers here. So what I'm showing you here is the NAEP. This is the national result. In 2013, they analyzed the results of grade 8 mathematics, and they did grade 4 and 12 as well, but I'll show you grade 8 for tonight. And so this is the math result, and in the lingo of the NAEP assessment, proficient, it means something very different from what we're used to thinking when we hear about proficient with CMT or CAP. For a student to be proficient or above on the NAEP, that means that they are considered to have mastered their subject, and they would be on a glide path toward college readiness. So it's somewhat rigorous. So 34% nationwide, 34% of the 8th graders in mathematics hit proficient and above. Now, Connecticut, they tell us what the number is for just Connecticut. A little bit higher percentage. We're doing a little better than the national average, 37%. Now here comes the SBA. When they did the SBA field test a little over a year ago, they embedded some of the NAEP, some of the NAEP questions in the SBA field test, okay? And so a lot of the questions in that field test bore a close resemblance to the NAEP. And 32% in the SBA consortium were deemed proficient and above. Now, in the SBA world, that's level 3, okay, which means meets or better. So about a third of the students. And by the way, the SBA consortium is multiple states. I don't know the exact number, but it's not just Connecticut, but it's not the whole country. Now here's the CMT. Okay, so now in 2013 in Connecticut, 65% of the students were deemed not just proficient, but goal or above. Okay, and so they didn't give us the data for proficient, but this is for goal, which is a higher threshold, and yet 2/3 of Connecticut students were considered to be at goal or above, versus 32% at level 3 on the SBA. So this is this is a good slide to meditate on, and I think that should give you a little idea of what we might be facing when the results come out. I just wanted to share with you the corresponding slide for reading at 8th grade level, and now Connecticut is definitely strong. We tend to do very well on reading, apparently, and 3/4 of the students were considered goal and above on the CMT, 8th grade, versus 41% for the SBA. Okay, so here are some things that I think would be good to think about as we get ready for the results. We have to realize that, as Dr. Fieser said, we just absorbed some of the new standards that are some of the biggest change that we've seen in 30 years. The curriculum has been revised substantially. The instructional approach has had to adjust significantly. It's a new test. It looks very different to the students than the CMT and CAP did. It's asking the students to perform at a higher level on very different skills, a lot of additional skills. The tasks are more complex and rigorous. And it's a totally new expectation. It's not merely proficient, which always struck me as a little bit of a weasel word. I never quite knew what that meant. But this means we want to know that the students are prepared. If they choose to go on to college or a career, we want to know whether they're ready or on track or not. States are all over the country are anticipating lower performance in terms of the percentage deemed prepared. But we feel very strongly here in Milford that, and we know that the rate of learning and the depth of learning that's going on in our classrooms has improved substantially over the last few years as a result of the new standards. And also, don't forget that every year going forward, this is going to be a building-in process, right? The standards and the curriculum were only implemented a couple years ago. And so every year, the students will have had more years of Connecticut core aligned instruction. I feel so sorry for the high school, the 11th graders, taking this test because they did not have the benefit of the K through 11. Well, I guess if the standards were adopted, say 2 years ago when they were 9th graders, they didn't have the benefit of that kind of instruction K through 8. And so they're really kind of in for a shock. But it's going to get better and better over time. So this is the last slide I'll talk about, and then love to open it up for questions. So the important thing, I really hope we were able to help you understand this SBA test a little bit better. We think that the expectations that are that we're looking for in this assessment are more appropriate and set them up for to be better prepared for college and career. We think that the indicators are very transparent. How will we know where students are? Okay, so if, as seems likely, the percentage of students meeting level 3 or above goes down from what we're used to, does that mean that the students lost IQ points overnight? No, certainly not. And so one tool that we have, a really great thing about Milford, is that we've had this assessment, the NWEA assessment, which is administered 3 times a year, K through 10. And so we have a lot of data before the SBA assessment, and we'll have it after the SBA results are known. And we can continue to see if students are growing according to the NWEA scale. So that will give us a reference point while we're going through this transition. And then I guess, you know, speaking as a parent, I have 2 young daughters, and I will tell you that the transparency of the indicators, I think, I find it very valuable. If my older daughter struggles in school, and I want to know where she's at. If she is falling below the trajectory, I want to know sooner rather than later, so that we have an opportunity to intervene and you know, make adjustments. On the other hand, let us not forget that the SBA is not the only measure of academic or future success. You know, what they do in the classroom means a lot. Not everybody is an ACE test taker, right? And so the teacher feedback on what the student is capable of and the work ethic that they show every day is still invaluable. And don't forget, you know, there are character traits like motivation, self-control, and grit. That still matters a lot to future success. So I guess I'll leave the group with this. So where do we go from here? You know, I guess we'll have to wait and see. All right, so Dr. Fieser, is there anything else that you'd like to?
What I would say to you is that, you know, we wanted to talk about this not in a defensive posture, because we're not feeling defensive at all, but what we are cognizant of is the fact that, you know, this is so brand new to all of us. You know, and you asked the question, rightfully so, what are the results? We don't even know when the results are coming in. And for a reason that was given here, we expect that our performance is not going to be the equivalent of what people are accustomed to seeing for the last decade or more, you know, in terms of kids' performance, because of the reasons that we gave you. So we wanted to bring it to the attention of the board and also to the public, you know, to acknowledge this is the case. But what we do expect is that as we become more and more familiar with the standards and they're more and more embedded in our curriculum and our teachers are more comfortable and they are then employing, you know, new approaches to their teaching, and kids, you know, are grasping, you know, in better ways this new curriculum, we will start to see increases in the performance on the Smarter Balance. So this first year, we know, okay, this is the first year. There's our benchmark, if we want to say. You know, and so there's going to be some fits and starts, you know, as we move forward. But it's not because our kids are any less intelligent or that our teachers are, you know, mediocre. That's not the case. It's that they're being asked to do some very, very different kinds of teaching and learning that they've never been asked to do before. And so it's gonna take time. And that was the reason why we wanted to share this with you. It's why we also sent you the article. Hopefully all of you read it, you know, which outlines, and that wasn't necessarily specific to Smarter Balance. It's whenever you have such a major shift as is happening here in Connecticut. And quite honestly, it's happening in multiple states. There's a lot of states that are a few years ahead of us. Kentucky's ahead of us. New York's ahead of us. Just trying to remember, but there's some other states as well who have gone through this. This has been their experience. And this is going to be our experience, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, what is wrong with the Newton Milford Public Schools, or what's wrong with Connecticut schools, etc. And I understand people are asking that question, but they also need to understand why. You can't expect this. You can't expect the same thing. You just can't.
Questions from board members? Ms. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to administration. I have a few questions, and my first one is, won't all the Connecticut communities be in the same boat? So we could look at our scores in comparison to the state average and the consortium average as a bit of a benchmark?
That I don't know, because we would take our guidance from the state, but do we expect it across the state? We do, and if you were to go on the Connecticut State Board of Education website, there's a whole piece on there tied to the Smarter Balance. There's a whole section there for parents, and in it talks about the fact that parents should expect that the performance is going to drop, but that it's not a reflection on their students. They used the metaphor, I think, I always get metaphor and analogy confused, but of, the CMT measured, the ruler they used was by centimeters. The SBA, the ruler used is by inches. And so, they talked about, 4 centimeters growth versus 4 inches growth on the SBA. That but that what is required is far larger, if you want to use that metaphor. And so the state is saying that, and I know a number of superintendents have said that the state really needs to get out in front of this to educate the public. This is what is to be expected, and we're not trying to hide anything, but we want people to understand why this is the case.
Okay, thank you. No, and I understand that. I appreciate the message, and I appreciate the article, and I think it's a really good point. And I think it's great to raise this point now,
Right.
In anticipation of the test scores coming out. But I was just looking at it, as a parent, when I'm reading my child's report, I will naturally look at where my child is, and then I will look at the school, and then I will look at the district.
Sure.
And, I will make those comparisons and use those benchmarks to assess how my child is doing. Of course, you also want to see the 3s and 4s, but if you see how the school is doing, that gives you, a sense of where your child is supposed to be.
It's my understanding they are not going to be using, not just this year, but they are going forward, they are not going to be reporting out reference group scores.
Okay.
That's my understanding. But there again, that was orally hearing that, in meetings, but we've seen sample reports, but not final reports.
Okay.
So when you talk about comparisons, I think the state is making a conscious decision to say, we're not going to do these kinds of comparisons.
Okay. So we would only have perhaps a state average to compare to.
That's my understanding.
But not
That's not to say you couldn't go on and look up where other districts are, but they're not going to be reporting it out that way. At least that's what we were informed.
Okay, because I would probably apply the same concept looking at Milford schools versus the state, or Milford schools versus the rest of the consortium. That would be my benchmark in light of the fact that we can't go back to previous benchmarks.
Well, we certainly would want to look at what how the state has done.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And the slide where it shows on the students' report, and that's a comparison to the school and the district, is that just for the grade level?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, because your report that a parent receives is on your child in that particular grade.
Just the grade, okay.
So if it's grade 4, then you would find out how the 4th graders do across. That's really the only way you could compare it, because you couldn't compare it to 5th grade or 3rd grade or,
Okay.
Mrs. Federico, will you talk about this one? Is that what you're asking about?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. I used
The
my
sample
hands
report,
to...
right, okay. I just wanted to know what you were talking
line
about.
graph.
Yep, the lines. Okay, one last question. At the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that some board members or some people had taken a practice or a sample test. Is that anything that's available now, or is that only a certain period in time?
I can find out about that. What we did was we had a board workshop where we brought computers in, and board members actually sat and took some practice SBA assessments.
Oh, okay.
That was more than a year ago.
It was last 2 winters ago, yeah.
Yeah. So let me find out about that.
Actually, it's on their website.
The Connecticut State Department.
It's on the state website?
It's on Smarter Balance website, so you
Okay.
can do practice tests.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, thanks.
Any other questions from board members? Did you have a question?
I have a question. A couple of questions. I think, thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. Is it going to be available on the Milford Public School site? Because I think having this information will be useful to parents because it can help explain.
The presentation itself?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can put that, we would put that under the board, but we also could put it under, yes.
Okay. And the grade 8 math, figure 2, doesn't have all the bar graphs that you referred to in your presentation, at least in my copy.
I think we're missing a slide,
Oh,
so
Yeah.
we'll get that for the board.
I apologize. We were using, it's a PowerPoint thing, there were blocks over
Coming
the,
in.
as an
Yeah.
animation, and, yeah, I will be sure to get that
Okay.
fixed up.
Other thing I think that might be interesting is to know how Milford did, if any of our students were involved in the NAEP testing. And also, our students did take the 2014 SBA assessment.
Right.
So it'd be interesting just to know where that data stands on the
So
that.
NAEP does not give individual
Schools.
school, no, so we get nothing.
Districts, okay.
You know, it's, I do know, I think it was West Shore a couple of years ago was one of the schools, because it's not every year that our district is selected.
Right.
Because they're doing random samples across the entire nation, so many schools in Connecticut. But no, we get no scores back on the NAEP. And then the Smarter Balanced Field Test, there were no scores that came back. What the state did was they received scores, and they did the analysis from what they received, and then gave us kind of a summary statewide of analysis, some of it which is what Dr. Hammer included in his presentation. But we've received nothing, zero in terms of the field test.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's, I go back to when we talk about the unknown, it's the unknown. We don't know. You know.
Okay, yeah. And you've contacted the State Board of Education and the commissioner to say, you know, in the day and age of technology, you'd expect a computer-based test that you would have, the data would come back to the districts, just so
We
that.
would, and we thought that we understood that we were supposed to get some kind of data back on the field test. This would have been a year ago.
Right.
I'm not sure of all the reasons why we didn't. You know, I don't know. It could have been that maybe Smarter Balance in assessing. Again, it was a field test. Maybe there were questions that were not valid. I don't know all of that, but I know the state themselves, they looked at, you know, so many thousand items tied to the tests. And so they were able to then draw some conclusions from what they saw, but we received nothing. Anything that we actually shared tonight is on their website, you know.
Yeah.
But that's all. We didn't receive anything else. No.
So just to clarify, the two sites that we have that have these bar graphs, none of this data is specific to Milford.
No,
Correct.
no.
Right.
No, they're examples.
Right, okay.
Do you want to say anything more about that?
No, I mean, it's
I
possible.
just want to make sure it's clear. That's all.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mrs. Casey?
Not a question, just a comment. I just think we need to remember that the testing is just one piece of the puzzle. It's an important piece, but we need to take into consideration exactly the last piece that you spoke about was their classroom work and speaking to the teacher and understanding, you know, that entire student. I know parents are going to be very anxious about it, but I think it's important for them to get this information, but we need to look at the entire student.
Questions on this end? Yes, Mr. DeGrego?
I want to make one comment and one question. I want to tell Mr. Hammer, thank you very much for the presentation. And I attended a CAVE conference in Mystic, and they also said how the 11th graders were at a disadvantage because they didn't have it in the elementary stages. I want to go to page 13 and refer to the NWEA bridge. And then I want to go back to page 9, where it says 4 levels. And right here it says, needs substantial support, needs support. So this is during the school year, correct, Mr. Hammer? I'm sorry, this is through you, Ms. Conley.
Yes.
Okay. This is during the school year, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So then in June, that's like the finish line? and then whatever happens by then, because my question will be, what if a child is learning and just, he needs summer school? I mean, is June the point for all of these grade levels to be, you know, to give us our percentage, or do we have until like August when summer school's out? Say a kid really progresses in summer school with one subject and is focused. I mean, when a kid is focused with one class, he can get it. He can turn a C into an A. I've seen it done. Will that be the, does the summer school averages into that?
Well, I mean, I guess realistically, you know, like for example, let's say, you know, I'll think of my own daughter as an example, you know, in a month or whenever we get these results, if I see that Madeline has, you know, she's way below the, she's a 1 or a 2, I won't know that until the very end of August or, you know, maybe beginning of September, I don't know. And so now it's a new school year, and now she's, you know, climbing the next step already. And I guess it would just help us, by knowing that, we would be able to talk to her new teacher and any support staff at her elementary school to, you know, we could use that as, you know, some evidence to say we're concerned and, you know, what can we make a plan to help her get back on track, because she's clearly not at grade level.
Right, but through you, Madam Chair. What I'm trying to say, maybe I'm not as clear, Mr. Hammer. What I mean is, if a student is not doing well, and then they're going to make the, I think the NWEA, you call it, or whatever, they're going to make Milford, base what Milford's percentage is, do they base it on what a child finishes in June? Or if does he go to summer school and do better? Does that count in the average? Do you see what I'm trying to say?
It's based on when they take the test, so it depends on when they take the test.
Okay.
SBA's in the spring?
What I would, SBA is in the spring.
Okay.
So the elementary kids were the first group to take it, and they took it in March,
All right.
followed by the middle school kids, and then followed by the high school kids. And it's one assessment. The difference is NWEA, so going to your daughter, Madeline, you have these SBA assessments, but if she took the NWEA the year before, at least you could look at that and say, well, did she grow from September of a year ago to June? The NWEA, if you remember, it looks at growth, so the kids take an assessment in September, then they take it in the mid-year, then they take it at the end year, and so you can see their growth over the course of the year. And NWEA actually predicts how much they should grow based upon how they scored in September. So that at least is so informative to parents, and that's why at least we will have that for parents and for the board here. But in as far as coursework, summer school, et cetera, none of that has any bearing. These are standardized assessments.
All right.
These are standardized assessments that kids take, and it's how they do on the assessment on that given day, in the moment.
All
That's
right.
really what we're talking about.
Thank you, Doc.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Wisman, you had a question?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. It seems to me that in all of these testing, the timely response of the results is important, because if you're getting results that are 6 months ago results, it's hard to respond to a child's needs on a timely basis. Certainly the normal test that a teacher might give in the classroom for determining the class's progress, the teacher can then turn around and respond to that and begin the very next day to adjust and respond. These kind of tests don't seem to be very useful for that kind of help in terms of giving us direction or giving the teacher a tool to use in the classroom on a timely basis. So to the extent that we can persuade the state or others who do this reporting to be a little more timely in their response would be helpful. On this national test, you mentioned that it only occasionally come around and make a random selection. I was curious, how do they manage to select the students? For example, if they decide next year that Milford is going to participate. It concerns me just a little bit about how they select the students and how the students and their parents participate in such a test. One, it's another test, another distraction from learning, and some parents might want to opt out of such a thing if they're even become aware that such a test is given.
So it's been my experience, I received a letter from NAEP saying we would like to, have, Milford participate, and then it'll say specifically the school, it'll say the grade, and it'll say how many students.
It will say which students?
No,
Just say,
no, it just says how many. So it'll say, maybe they would like one section of kids, and maybe it's a cross-section of kids, but they'll designate the school and the grade. And then the tests that they're taking, they take only one test. They're generally not taking the whole battery of tests, like maybe they take the math test.
Okay.
But that's all dictated by NAEP itself to us, and it comes in a letter.
okay. Well, my uneasiness about it is that, to what extent do obviously if it's grade school students, they don't have too much to say about it, but the parents are involved or
No.
advised? Or?
No, I mean, I think that the principal of the school would let the parents know, we just want you to know that, we've been asked to have a sample of our kids participate. Your child is in the class that's going to be taking this test, blah, 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 blah. That's just to let them know. That's it. But that's really what it is, and then we don't ever hear anything again. Because remember, it's a random sampling in every state, and then in every state in the nation, which is why they can report out, as Dr. Hammer said, it's like the nation's report card because they're reflective of performance across the country. And then they also report the scores out by state.
What kind of demographics do they collect regarding the students?
I'd have to pull up I can't answer that.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, I guess we can move on.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hammer, thank you so much. Our next presentation is on the YMCA programs. We are thrilled to have Mr. Charlie Clifford here and his staff, and I know that Mr. Riccitelli, you were going to do a bit of an introduction.
Well, actually, I'll leave it to Mr. Clifford to introduce his team that's here tonight. As the board knows, the YMCA provides the before and after care in 6 of our 8 elementary schools, as well as many people don't know that they also do a middle school and a high school piece. But the board has been interested in that before and after care program, and so we asked Charlie to come and present to you some pertinent information, and then certainly answer any questions that you have. So I know he has his staff and some of his board members are here also tonight. So Charlie, we'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. I think it might make sense if I asked our crew to come over here, because we have a couple different folks who want to say a few words. YMCA is sort of a team sport, so. So anyway, I'll get started, but thank you very much, Jim, for that introduction, and Mrs. Glennon, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight. Welcome. Because we have a long history in partnership with the school system, which we'll go into very briefly, but this is a wonderful opportunity for us, and we're really proud of what we do and the impact that we have on our community. So this is a super opportunity, and I want to thank you for that. But as Jim said, my name is Charlie Clifford. I'm the Executive Director of the Y in Milford. I've also brought with us Nicole Service. She's our Senior Program Director. And Donna Denisha is our Child Care Director. So the administrative team for that program is right here. And then Dr. Amit Lahav is the chair of our board. So he's going to say a few words for us. And then Kevin McGrath is also on our board, but is a member of the corporate board of directors because we're a branch of the Central Connecticut Coast YMCA. So Kevin's going to close it out for us. But without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Lahav.
Thank you very much. You can go right to the presentation.
Thank you.
So we're going to start really with the first slide, and I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm one of the orthopedic surgeons here in Milford. I'm also the chair of, I recognize a few faces around here. The chairman of the board of the Y, but I'm also a father, and that's really kind of how I started. And everything was important to me about career and so forth, but really family is the most important for my kids, and I have 3 kids in the Milford school districts throughout the elementary school. So it affects me personally. For 2 working parents, my wife and I, having a before and after school program is really a necessity. It's not really a luxury, it's really needed. And for us, it's really important, and for hundreds of parents around the community as well, and I live in Milford. What's important is really to have a good, productive, educational, fun, but also safe environment for all the kids. And that's really kind of part of the Y mission, which is really kind of strengthen the whole overall community and provide really consistent care throughout Milford and provide this very good care really to the entire city without limitations and without really adjusting for any demographics whatsoever. And that really comes to really the second point on this slide, which in order for us to provide, or for the Y to provide this opportunity for all the kids for the before and after school program, we need sometimes to help. And in order to help those that are in need, we provide scholarships. And really the Y does this every year with an annual campaign to try to kind of bring money to the table to help those that really don't have the financial benefit of allowing their kids to go to before and after school program who would like to. The Y can provide that to really every kid in the community as a daily basis. Now the other important point that I want to make is that the Y provides a lot of other programs before and after school. And some of these programs for the needy or the middle school or the handicapped are actually operated at a loss. But the Y doesn't look at it as really as a loss. It's a non-profit organization, so any money that the Y can make from a successful program are re-injected really into the programs that help the community. And even those programs that operate at a loss now can still be established and continued and provided to really kids throughout the city. But without the before and after school, which is a successful program, has been done for several years around Milford. Unfortunately, if we don't have that stronghold, then some of these other programs that are beneficial to others will really have to be scaled back. So we're looking at more just the before and after. We're looking really at the whole picture and the whole project, how we can help the community. And the Y has been working hand in hand with the Milford community for many years now. And with no further ado, we're going to continue with Charlie. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We're super fortunate to have a wonderful crew of volunteers, and Dr. Lau is obviously no exception to that. I'm not going to go through the program history. Hopefully everybody by now has got handouts in front of them. But I will highlight a few points, and one thing that I just want to talk a little bit about is that the YMCA, the City of Milford Recreation Department, and the school system recognized a need for before and after school programming back in 1983. And in some shape or form, we've been operating that program ever since. And I don't know a lot of other partnerships in the city that have been around for over 3 decades, and I think that speaks volumes about our ability to interact with the community and the school system and sort of make sure that we have a program that really responds to the community's needs. So in the history, you'll see as we've added programs in schools, as we've reconfigured grades, we're always kind of there to make sure that the Y responds to the community, and you're our partner in doing that. So I think that's really important. The next slide that we're going to go into is kind of a day of the life of a child in the after-school program. So I don't know who has children and who doesn't, but the program is primarily geared toward, obviously, families who are either single income or dual income. Currently, there's 260 kids in the after-school program. There's 50 in the before-school program. And Donna and Denise is going to kind of talk us through what do those kids do. You know, we're not just warehousing kids. We're getting a lot more done than just that. So Don's going to talk about that, and then Nicole is going to just provide some information about the quality of the program. Because I want you to know that there's a high quality program having to do with the licensing and also the YMCA standards, which Nicole's going to talk a little bit about.
Okay, our before school program starts at 7:15, and we meet in the cafeteria space, and it is a licensed space. Parents will drop the child to us, they walk the child in, they sign the child into our morning program. We then work with doing table games such as Legos, puzzles, and coloring activities. We then move on to, at 8 o'clock, we go into active organized games, and then when the bell rings that morning, then the children will walk down to their classroom. So that's like our before school program. Our after school program, that can start about 3:30, depending on the school that we're at. And at that program, we start an arrival and attendance. The attendance time is, if a child is supposed to be with us that day, then we will go down to the secretary, work with the schools, and try to find out where that child is. And usually the secretary will call down to the teacher, and she will say, oh, I forgot to send that note to you. Oh, okay, no problem, as long as we know where that child is. That's really important to us to know where that child is that day. Then after arrival and attendance, we will go into, weather permitting, outside to play for about 30 minutes on the playground, or we'll stay inside and do an active organized game. After that, we'll come in and do a bathroom break, washing hands. Then we provide what's called a healthy snacks. We have 2 nutritional snack ideas. It has to be in 2 food groups, so that's part of their day of that healthy snack. After that healthy snack, we'll go into homework and quiet time. Homework is where the staff will go around and sit with children and see if they need any help with their homework. The quiet activities are things like, coloring and reading, independent reading on their own, where the child can, again, ask for help if they need some. Very 30-minute time frame, very nice activities for the kids to do. After that 30-minute, then we'll go into what's called age-appropriate centers. We'll have a craft center, we'll have a Lego center. Those kinds of things are set up for the children so they can go around to the different centers and enjoy that activity. And then we'll break that down and go into another big active game. And the end of our day is 6 o'clock. So that's our before school and after school activities. The next slide is going to show you some activities that we do with the children. As you can see, we have some fun activities happening at our after school site. We have an activity there where the children are sitting down on the floor and the staff is reading a book. It's very important to our staff that we stay on the child's level, always going down to their level, talking to them, and even as you can see here, they're sitting down on the floor reading a book. We also have what's called the corner area. So what happens in the corner area is children get to go over, pick a book, and read a story, which is really nice. We have board games. As you can see, the staff participates in those board games. We also get ready on the activity end of the organized game where the children like to play sharks and minnows, they play relay games, mum ball, so they love doing those kinds of activities. You can see that there. And then our snack time. That's when the kids get to talk and enjoy each other's company and have their healthy snack. So that's pretty much what we do at our before school and after school program. Thanks.
Every program has to have quality measures and ways that we make sure that we are keeping our children safe and keeping within the expectations of those that we're serving. There's 2 different kind of schools of thought with our quality measures. One's through the Department of Public Health and with our daycare licensing, not camp. All of our staff have gone through an extensive amount of training before they even reach the children. They've gone through first aid and CPR. They've gone through background checks. They have also gone through child abuse prevention training. And we even take it another step further with our staff and all our members by going through a screening for the National Sex Offender List. Additionally, we have health and social consultants and dental consultant that we can work with and do work with to keep a continuity of care with our families. A lot of them have different needs that they may encounter through their life, and we assist them with whatever it may be through the school day, then working with them and those consultants to have continuity with us at after school and then again at home. The other area is within YMCA best practices. It's very important that we know how our families feel we are meeting their expectations. We've partnered with SEER Analytics, and they send out a survey yearly for us. We go over those results and help utilize those results to make our program stronger. Donna also meets regularly, about quarterly, with all the principals within the schools that we serve, so she can find out if we're meeting their expectations and how we can work together, again, to have a stronger program. We also have what they call HEPA standards, and HEPA stands for Healthy Eating Physical Activity. Today, kids are struggling. We have a number of children that are overweight, and they need to keep moving. And that is a commitment by the YMCA to say, children are going to have 30 minutes of active playtime. This way they're getting some exercise. And we're cautious of the foods that we serve in our snacks. We are cautious about the things we give them to drink. Water is that #1 item. We want to keep our children hydrated. And finally, one other thing we do is yearly we meet with the assistant superintendents in order to see how we're standing with your expectations as well.
So from time to time it'll come up, folks will ask us, well, what other districts partner with YMCAs to provide before and after school care? So this is not by any means an exhaustive list. This is some of the contacts that we have in the state of Connecticut. But you have your Westport's on there and Avon's, really what we perceive as high functioning school districts. So we think that there's something to that, obviously. The next slide, we'll talk about a little bit about why do districts partner with any organization or YMCA in particular to provide before and after school programming. And I think the biggest reason is probably to focus on core education. Our day starts at 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:15. So we start managing staff somewhere 6 o'clock in the morning with call-outs and sick folks and all that kind of stuff and staffing issues. It allows you to focus on your core period of the day. And then our day ends at 6 o'clock. So at your dismissal, that's when we're getting active with our kids and all that kind of stuff. We like to think that you partner with the YMCA also because of the Y's core values of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. They're the same values that I see posted over all the schools when I walk into school. So that I think makes a lot of sense. Obviously, some of the more mundane aspects is that YMCA doesn't have union labor costs. Our focus on health and wellness. Swimming in Milford is obviously a big thing for a shoreline community. Our access to our swimming pool is really important, and the YMCA believes strongly that kids need to be safe around the water. So we've set the goal of making kids safe around the water by age 12, and we have mini buses that drive around to pick up the kids from the after-school sites and bring them over to the YMCA so that they can get that activity in. Our scholarships with Dr. Lahav talked about. Our expertise, I like to think we're pretty good at doing what we do after doing it for 30 years. The administrative burden is a piece that I think nobody kind of thinks about. The credit card processing fees, the insurance certificates, all of the FICA, workers' comp, all that kind of stuff, processing all the financial aid applications, registering everybody through our point of sale software. So there's a lot to that. The other thing which Dr. Lahav alluded to was the continuity of care. The YMCA offers vacation day programs for when you're on school break. So a lot of parents will transition over to the Y from during those breaks. Obviously summer camp, which is what we're in right now, pretty hardcore. So there's be 250 to 300 kids around YMCA grounds during summer camp. And the thing that we sometimes forget about is that snow days as well. So it's very, very rare that the YMCA would close, and we provide snow day care as well. My wife cannot take off when it's snowing outside, so the kids have to go to the YMCA. So you have that consistent care throughout the year, and to come, when weather or some of these other things throw some expected things at you. And we also are a United Way agency, so we have the benefit of taking the United Way dollars and allocating those to the children in the before and after school program as well. From time to time, costs will come up, as it should. This is a snapshot of the cost structure within the last couple of months of some of the competitors to the YMCA program, or like providers. It's important to note that on this slide, these are licensed child care providers. And it's not every single child care provider in the community, but it's a lot of them that have the care at the same hours that we do. So that some of these, there's other providers that might stop at 4 o'clock, but we go till 6. And so that's just some background information for you to take a peek at. over time, or if there's any questions. Financial analysis is kind of the other piece that comes up from time to time. So we're currently serving 260 kids in after school, 50 kids in before school. Last year, that was roughly revenues of $546,000 with a direct expense of $263 for all the things that you know about. Gas for the buses, bus drivers, snack, program supplies, salaries, taxes and benefit. A lot of our staff qualify for a retirement fund. Even as part-time employees, they can earn enough hours to get into the Y retirement fund. So all those things are in there, scholarships. And then what we call our Department 900 expenses is administrative expenses, which is obviously the credit card processing fees, the insurance I spoke about, the surveys that we have to pay for market research, background checks, lead tests, all that stuff that's associated with running a licensed child care program. And I think that's an important designation because some organizations don't have to be licensed. Boys and Girls Clubs don't have to be licensed. They're exempt. School districts are exempt. But we're licensed by the Department of Public Health, and that all goes through the Office of Early Childhood Education. So they're in charge of audits and surprise walkthroughs and report cards and all that kind of stuff associated with the compliance that the state of Connecticut wants to see our program fulfilling. And the bottom piece is the available subsidy, which kind of what Dr. Lahab had talked a little bit about, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. And so why the Woodruff YMCA? So these are some of the things that we do that are unique to the Y that support children in our community and also are supported by that program. So the Angel Fund for students with special needs. So the best way to explain this is through example. There is a child in a motorized wheelchair that's in our YMCA before and after school program at Meadowside. And he needs help toileting, he needs help with snack, he needs help with lifting, all these things that are challenges to being active in an inclusive child care setting. And so the Angel Fund will run usually around $10,000 to $12,000 a year, and that's the funds, the separate funds that we use to pay for, in this case, a one-on-one pair to work with that child so he can take part in an inclusive program. That's one example of what we use the funds for. Some of it's for training on lifting, some of it's for training on toileting, some of it's so that we have extra staff so that we always follow the Rule 3. We have to make sure that there's usually 2 staff members with a child at all times to protect that child and also to protect the staff. The middle school after school program. These are fun kids that are in your district that really they're not quite ready to go home by themselves just yet. So our mini buses, there's 3 of them, will pick the kids up at the middle schools and bring them back to the YMCA, and they spend 5 days a week at the YMCA as they continue to grow and develop and be ready to be home on their own. The high school after school program that we run also serves the high schools in the academy, and we pick up those children and bring them back to the YMCA, and they stay with us till usually age 21, just like they do in your school system. That program is pretty unique because it's pretty intensive in terms of their care, their needs, but they get to learn job shadowing stuff, administrative skills, custodial skills, how to work with a supervisor. So we give them light jobs within the YMCA. So not necessarily so they can get a job in administration someplace, but so that they can continue to build their social skills. So when they do transition out of your district, they are a little bit more ready for that next step in their life. So that's kind of unique to the Y, I think. Coordination with local services. Because of all the different programming we have a lot of relationships with different community service providers, which I think make solving problems in the programs a lot easier if you didn't have all these relationships. Community service project is the other thing I'll end this slide on. And, these kids they're amazing kids, and they do coat drives, they do can drives for Bethel, they do different drives for the animal shelter, collecting dog food and cat food and that kind of stuff. So all those community service projects is a real part of what we're trying to teach those kids in our program as part of the Y's mission of social responsibility. So just some of the uniqueness that's associated with our program. I want to end it right there and then ask Kevin McGrath to say a few words, and then if our AV works, we'll have a quickie video to summarize this.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having us. I just want to give you a little bit different perspective. I think that what Charlie and the staff did, and Doctor, is a lot of information for you. But I think that we are blessed in this community to have the YMCA here and based here. That facility is, I've said all along, is the best kept secret in Milford. I would encourage each and every one of you to physically go and call Charlie or the staff, and they'll be happy to take you around and show you what the facility does on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's very important. I would also encourage you to stop in and take a look at the after-school aspect, because I think that you would be pleasantly surprised. And for what the bang for the dollar, so to speak, it's incredible. There is a number of letters and communication that is on file up there that I could bring reams of paper in here tonight and read them off to you. But I just want to read you just a quick note that I had the opportunity to speak to a woman literally about 4 or 5 months ago who found out that I was on the board, and she had a question that Charlie helped me solve. And I said to him, I said to her and her husband, let me know. I said, I just really gone on the board for the Y, and have you used the facility? And they said, well, not really. We were going to become a member, but our children have gone through the full program. And one of the things that came out, and people that I've talked to across the city, and I think it's very, very important, was, call it the David Letterman top 10 things you want to know about the Y. But there was always these 8 to 10 things always came from everybody. And it was not necessarily in the order that I'm going to read it off. But the interesting thing was, and you saw the dynamics of the finances side of it, is that the affordability end of it, most likely when you talk to people, came in the middle or came in the end. The most important thing for them was safety. They wanted education for their children. All of them wanted a structured environment, be it in the morning or be it in the afternoon. We spoke tonight about the physical aspects of health. That was also important. They wanted someone that was going to care for their child, and they wanted consistency. Consistency rated all the time. They wanted someone who was going to be engaged with their children. They didn't want to just show up and little Johnny or Mary is given a book and they sit in the corner. That's not what happens, and that's why it's important that you physically go see that and see what is being done in this community on a daily basis for the morning and the afternoons. And they wanted professionals. And I think that you could not find a greater group of people that are totally, totally dedicated when most of us are finishing our day. A lot of them are just going to work. So again, I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. But again, it is a great facility and a great group of people. And again, I would encourage you to look into it. Thank you.
I don't know how to make it play. I don't know how to make it play, but the kids at one of the after-school sites did put together with some of their parents a little video about why they enjoy the Y. But I can't make it.
Okay. Can you know how to do that?
I don't think
you know.
Nah.
No?
We thought it was
Maybe
embedded, but it's
Yeah, I thought it was embedded in. It worked on my laptop
Did
at
you
home.
double click on it? No.
There.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Oh, but the sound's down, yeah.
Why do you like coming to the YMCA? Like what?
Like sharks and minnows and so I don't have to do it at home, and also I do games and
Avery, why do you like coming to the Y?
even I love playing with you. So why? Because we get to go swimming and I love all the fun trips, the children play. Because we can help each other. So I was to have and get on role model to get to see all my friends. Because we do homework and I like doing math and reading because it makes me smart.
Why do you like sending your children to the YMCA?
Well, my kids love going to the Y. They learn great values. they learn responsibility and cleaning up after themselves, and they really enjoy it.
And they also learn how to be friends. And if you can't take care of your kids, you want to send them to a place where you're like safe and you feel good about it. And I think the counselors are outstanding. Thank you.
So we actually, this was a thank you video for the United Way, and so we use that to let their board know that we appreciate the support that they gave us, but I think the content sort of describes a little bit about the feeling that you get from our program and the kind of the sense that you get. So I'll turn it over to you. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Questions, board members? Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Who wants to answer the question? Page 9, the numbers you're talking about, the figures.
Yes, sir.
Per month?
The rates, yes, those are per month. Yeah.
And would you explain to the YMCA member what the cost would be for a YMCA member to join your Y and pay annually, monthly?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It kind of depends on what you decide to do, but there's a member fee and what we call a community member fee. There is about 85% of the people, the children in the YMCA Before and After School program are already members because they do swimming lessons and they do summer camp and all that kind of stuff. You can sign up a child for a youth membership for $25, $24.99 a month. But a lot of the families, because they have siblings or because their parents want to work out, will go up to $79.99. What's a little bit misleading about those prices is that the YMCA's pricing structure is based on your household income. And so there's a sliding scale in order to get the middle income and lower income into the program. That's part of those financial aid dollars that we raise and give away. So.
We flip the page over to page 10.
Sure.
Those figures, is that what your program is generating by revenue from the Milford schools only?
Yes, this is only Milford Public Schools. It's the only municipality that we provide after-school care in currently.
And could you tell us the number of employees that you have in our school system?
Yeah, we have 40, was it 40? Yeah, we have 40, the direct service providers, we have 40. So because we're licensed by Department of Public Health, their ratio is 1 staff member for every 10 children. And so, you know, obviously we follow those ratios. Just in the last configuration, Mathewson was the biggest school. There was 62 kids in Mathewson, so it all follows that ratio basis.
And the last question I have, and then I have a comment.
Sure.
Could you provide us, for example, Stratford is a somewhat similar type of community, but it has a different setup at the Y, how much they'd be paying for their school programs?
Yeah, I could research that, yeah.
And my comment is, I just think there was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Most of us have embraced and enjoyed the Y for a long period of time, but it's really good to see the work you're doing. Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Other questions?
No question, just a comment. It's just an excellent presentation. And I myself have been a product of the YMCA programs way back when I was...
What school in 1980?
I was around being chased by the dinosaurs. We're going to YMCA, going through the youth leader programs, and then eventually going to the original YMCA college, Springfield College, and being a graduate, being awesome. 86 graduate.
Awesome.
But fantastic job.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Mr. Whiskeyman?
I was just curious how your program ties in. We have a breakfast program for some children in some schools where there are needs for that kind of thing. How the program might tie in or link or coordinate with that kind of program?
If you're referring to the free or reduced lunch program, everybody at the Y is on the free or reduced lunch program. So the food, the snack that we provide in the morning and the afternoon is all covered with their registration fees and that kind of stuff. So we don't know who those children are who are on free or reduced lunch. We have some financial aid information on folks who we've provided scholarships to, but every kid gets food and snack in the program.
And the breakfast program wouldn't begin until the kids until.
Finish with the before school?
Right, they would be coming into the school program, and then they would get their breakfast.
Oh, okay, I was just wondering if there was overlap there, or if that was a handoff, or how that.
No, I don't think there's an overlap.
Yeah, I don't think that it's, if you're looking for ways that we can work together, there probably would be an opening.
I was just curious about the integration of that. So your program stops at the school hour start?
Well, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then our breakfast program picks up as children enter into the school at the beginning of the school day?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Mrs. Federico?
Yes, I have a few. So on slide 10, and thank you for the presentation, by the way. I did, it was very good. Very clear and pretty easy to read. On slide 10, the available subsidy, can you explain a little bit of what that is?
Sure. Yeah, no, as Dr. Lahab mentioned, there's programs that can support themselves and a little bit more, and the after-school program is one of those programs. So that available subsidy of $117 that's created from the before and after-school program is then utilized to subsidize the middle school after-school program, the high school after-school program, a lot of the scholarships that are provided for children who can't afford the program, and the Angel Fund. And so the YBA nonprofit has a zero bottom line, but a lot of YMCA programs like swim lessons don't cover their costs. And so it's not unusual for a YMCA to sort of make sure that the whole bottom line balances to zero, so that even though the middle school program can't sustain itself, it's really important to those kids who are in that program. And so that's how we make it all work.
Okay. So, these amounts here represent just the before and after school care programs combined?
Correct.
Okay. Would there be any way to see how much of that 117, does that all go to middle school, the programs you just named? Or does it go anywhere else?
No, it stays with child care programs. And the list of things that the YMCA subsidizes through its operations is far and wide. This is not an exhaustive list of that either. So this exceeds 117, but the YMCA kind of finances itself that way.
Okay. So if we could, and I don't know if this is possible, I don't know how detailed your statements are, but if we could, I think it would be interesting for me to see what else the YMCA is spending on for the school system.
Sure.
It would be helpful to know that.
We have we do cost studies on a regular basis to figure out so we know what we're subsidizing. So it'd take me a little while to research it, but we can put that together.
Okay, all right. And another kind of a financial question. You mentioned that there's a sliding scale.
Yes.
Would you be able to tell us or get for us at what income level does that start?
For membership, it's $55,000. So if household income is $55,000 or lower, there's a sliding scale. There is a sliding scale for programs, and we consider this a program as well. So
right. So with that, it is based not just on the income; it's also based on how many individuals are in the household.
Correct.
So whereas the membership is based upon strictly that household income, the program support scholarships is also based on how many people are in the household.
Okay. So is that something you could share with us?
Yeah, actually.
Well, because it's probably a lot to.
Sure, it is. I mean, it's a sliding scale, and I haven't memorized, but it's also something that we submit to the school system every year, so they know basically what we're charging and how we administer the financial aid program.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Oh, great question.
Okay, thank you. I have two other questions towards administration. Or you guys, if someone could explain the point that you made about the school district not needing to be licensed for childcare.
I can start with that, but I'll defer to Dr. Fieser. YMCA operations generally fall under the Office of Early Childhood Education. That's a relatively new change with the state, but our child care programs are licensed through the Department of Public Health. And they have a whole criteria that's set up. Mrs. Glenn is exactly familiar with that.
I am.
Criteria that every licensed program has in the state, and there's also a criteria for summer day camp as well. And there's a threshold of hours of care that you provide, and then you qualify for that. When those licensing standards were developed, I'm not sure when, but probably 15 to 20 years ago, Boys and Girls Clubs were exempt from that standard because kids were kind of coming in and coming out, and they had a good lobbying effort. The school system, I'd have to defer to Dr. Fieser on how that works.
And I have to get more of the details, but what I can tell you is because the program is run by the Milford Board of Education, it's under the auspices of the school system, there's automatically some standards that we would already have met because it's in one of our school buildings. You know, and then also in terms of our assumed responsibility for staffing, et cetera. So the state doesn't require that programs that are run by school systems would be held to the licensing standard.
Okay. Because many of the standards are already there because it's a school.
Because it's a school.
It's okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to.
Right. But I can get more information on that.
Okay. All right. And then finally, I know we've talked a little bit about, as a board, about the Milford Public Schools programs, and I was just wondering if it was possible to have a similar overview on those programs at some point.
Sure. Yep.
And that's it.
All set? Do you have some questions, Dr. Goldberg?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. Back to page 10, if you could clarify again, the revenue, that top line represents what?
Fees collected for child care services.
Okay, so it includes the elementary, before and after school, the middle school, and the high school.
Yes, we have middle school and high school.
Middle school and high school are in that line, but they're the smallest percentage.
Right.
Okay. And what about summer camp?
Summer camp is separate. If you're enrolled in the YMCA after-school program, it doesn't mean you're automatically enrolled in the summer camp program. Summer camp has a different cost structure based on its own market, and but still has scholarships for children who can't afford it and all that kind of stuff. So there are two sort of separate and distinct programs.
But the $546,000, that is including the summer camp?
No, excluding summer camp. This is just before and after school childcare.
Okay. And the Milford Public School is the only district that your Y is working with?
It's the only district that our Woodruff Family YMCA branch is working with.
Mm-hmm.
We are one branch of 13 other branches in the Central Connecticut Coast Association, and we probably provide care to, I'm guessing, another 15 municipalities through those other Ys.
Okay, but all of you are associated with?
We support the Milford, okay. The Milford school system.
One other question. The staff that works with the children in the schools that's giving educational support, homework help, how many of those people, or what percent, are certified teachers?
Very few of them are certified teachers. We have of the 40 staff, they're varying ages. They tend to be on the younger side of things. They're mostly students that are either in college or have graduated from college, and most of them focusing their career path on early childhood education or secondary ed. And they also they have credentials from the state of Connecticut. They have to actually apply to the state of Connecticut for a head teacher job or an assistant teacher job, and obviously they meet those credentials. It's interesting too, when we lose a staff member, it's because generally they're picked up by your district or Stratford or West Haven, and so they go right into teaching jobs because they have great experience and exposure through the Y program.
So what percentage of the staff are certified
teachers?
None?
None. Three.
You can get back to us.
So we have a couple of pairs. Mike Cummings and Jim and I a couple of years ago had a push to try and integrate more Milford public school staff into the YMCA program. But they were not looking for the extra hours because they were, I think, exhausted at the end of the day. So we picked up 2 or 3 during that period of time, and some of them stayed with us. But we've tried it a few times and haven't got it to work just yet on a mass scale. But it's certainly something that we're open to. We're all, good staff are always appreciative.
Other questions? Mr. Whiskeyman?
Just one other thing comes to mind, and I would think this would be directed to the administration, is in terms of the meeting of the demand, the number of, I'm not sure this is readily available, but you know, how are we doing at servicing the total demand of the community in terms of those who need these services? Are there those who are underserved in terms of before and after school programs? And I was just curious, you know, are we saturating the market, so to speak? Do we have everyone? Are there those who would need these services who have not come forward to seek these services for one reason or another? Or are we pretty well meeting the needs of the community in terms of the totality of the programs that are currently running, both ours and the Y's?
Well, I think that, I don't know if we have any hard evidence, but we also at the same time don't get, we don't get asked to provide more services. I don't know if there's a way of putting a number on that.
I was just curious in terms of, you know, are we underserving, or does it appear to be, as far as we can tell, that we're adequately servicing the demands of the community at this point in time?
I think it's hard to determine that. I think that although we don't have any concrete evidence of this, I would imagine that there are families that would like to participate in either the WISE program or the school systems program, but really can't afford it, even with the sliding scale, or even with, you know, the rates that we may charge, et cetera. I think the fact that you have, you know, 250 plus kids who may be at the Boys and Girls Club every day after school, that's $50 a year, that I think a lot of parents take advantage of that. And some of that is just purely because it's so inexpensive. Now, they're clearly not getting the same kind of a program like what you just described. And because it's a club, it's not intended to be an after-school program. But we have no way of determining.
No, I was just wondering if we had a sense of that.
Right.
I could just tell you that each one of the schools that we operate in holds its own license, and that has a license capacity. So we've gotten some schools that are a lot closer to that license capacity, like Mathewson last year, as opposed to others. So, and I can tell you that on the early childhood education side of things, we also operate preschools, and the YMCA is in the midst of a pretty large construction project right now to put in 2 additional full-day preschool classrooms. And that's been based on a need and a waiting list that we've had for many, many years. We just haven't had the space to house it. So if that gives you any insight into sort of what we're experiencing.
Oh, okay, that's helpful, and to understand, you know, that you're responding to the demands as you perceive them to be, and from your perspective that, you know, you're receiving some demand from the community for the services, regardless of what's happening at the school systems per se, but that the community sees the need for your services.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so that's useful information.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Other questions? Mr. DeGrego?
Yeah, I'd like to make a short statement, if I may, and then I just want to ask you a question, Madam Chair.
Is it relating to the presentation?
Yeah. You know, I'm a member of the Y, and I know Charlie and Nicole and Donna for like 5 years or more. And as a staff, they all work as one, and their integrity is second to none. You walk in the building and you don't even know that Charlie's not there. It's not like the cat's away and everybody will play. Everybody has their job to do. The organization runs efficient and cost-effective, as far as I can see, in the Y building. And every child, and I mean every child, is engaged in the activity at hand, and they're all having fun and enriching friendships. And with that said, I was wondering, Madam Chair, if I could ask this, is there a chance that we can, as a board, go to one of these? Or are we allowed to go on our own time?
Oh, you may go in your own time.
Okay.
Go to where? I mean,
To one of the, you have to visit.
well, we'd have to wait until after school starts again, but,
Okay.
you know, board members, if they're, you know, available, certainly we can
Sure.
arrange, you know, nobody should just drop in, but we should
No,
make, you know, if people want to go, you know, we can try to arrange that once school starts back in session.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? Mrs. Federico?
Madam Chair, through you to administration, just in reference to Mr. Wiskeman's question, I'm wondering if that is something that at some point in time we could get at that question with a survey. Is that something that's possible to find out if there are families out there that would like to use after-school care programs but can't afford them? Would they, you know, would they? Is there a need for after-school care programs amongst families that can't afford it, or families that would participate if the costs were lower? I don't know if that's something we can get at in one of our surveys that we run.
I'm sure that we could. I think we'd have to be careful in, you know, the financial piece, how we would pose that, because we don't want to suggest that we're making a commitment to match whatever it is that would be in a survey. But certainly we could.
Yeah, no, and I agree. We'd have to. It would have to be worded carefully.
Right.
I just wanted to put that
Sure,
possibility
maybe
out.
there's some surveys out there that we could research that maybe other districts have put out as well with respect to sort of assessing the need. I do think your comment of, you know, has any of the programs in the schools, are they maxed out, which I'm hearing no, but it doesn't get at the financial piece, which is something that we certainly could see how we might get at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for some families, and my family certainly has done this, we look at the whole equation.
Right.
So if there's a spouse who's been home and that spouse is considering going back to work, well, the first thing you consider is, can I afford the childcare? And
Right.
is the salary worth it to me? As Mrs. Glennon probably has heard many families going through these scenarios in their head. Well, if I, you know, have this option for childcare and it costs X and my salary is Y, you know, does it make sense for me to go back to work or should I stay home? I mean, I think a lot of families go through that question. I mean, in my family, I happen to be with my husband, which I know is not the traditional expectation, but you know, these are decisions that families are making every day, and you can't see that by looking at who's attending the program. It's about who's not attending the program.
Mrs. Lennon, if I may, there's a lot of kids on scholarship in the community, and there's a fairly robust system that we have to review those scholarships, application, the income verification, and all that kind of stuff. It is very, it's not uncommon for us to get, this was my salary last year, but my husband's out of work. It's not uncommon for Jim to call up and say, after Superstorm Sandy came through, I know these people had decent income, but we need to make sure we get this. It's important that a kid gets into this program. I've gotten 3 calls from Peggy Kelly, or emails from Peggy Kelly, the last 2 weeks saying they haven't even applied yet, but they're going to apply, and I want you to take a look at the circumstance and know that this is going on and this is going on. And I can't think of a time in my 8 years tenure with this Y that we haven't helped that family or child out. So there is a spot on the application to kind of describe some extenuating circumstances, and we absolutely take that into account and have a discussion with them at that period of time of, well, what can they afford? The sliding scale gives us a framework to even start that conversation. And gives us some predictability of what that scholarship demand is going to be for that year.
Yeah, so I appreciate the charitable nature of the Y, and I'm sure that there are many families who are struggling who get help, just by the fact that you talked about the scholarships and how important that is. But I'm looking at the ones in the middle, the ones that fall just above the sliding scale. And certainly if you're considering some family member, spouse going back to work, that's going to up that income and that may push you out of the sliding scale.
Absolutely.
So I just think it's a challenge that we have to be sensitive to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions? So I had a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. Is it possible to get the data on actually how many students are being served, middle school, high school, elementary school?
Sure. Does the 260 include the middle school and high school? It does, yeah.
260 total?
I think it's 262.
It's
to be
262.
honest.
I mean, obviously, kids come in and
kind
come
of
out
round
based on jobs and all that kind of stuff, but yeah.
At all 3 levels? Okay. And so help me understand your application process. Is it a true sliding scale so that if you screen people when they apply as to what their income is and then you develop, wherever they fall, that's what they pay? Or are you only looking at scholarship help if they request help?
I'll start that, but Nicole administers all of that paperwork, so I'll let her go. But we encourage folks to come to our front desk. There's an application you don't even have to ask somebody for it. It's in the brochure level, and you can just pick it up and submit it confidentiality. After that point in time, it makes its way to Nicole's desk.
Not everybody applies. It's those who
So they have to actually apply.
Yes.
Or someone says to us, we've got a family, we want you to help, and then we work with them. With membership, however, because I know membership was brought up before,
Right.
It's sliding scale under 55,000. So when someone comes and wants to get information on membership, we'll ask them, is your income below 55,000? So before we give them a rate, so that we give them the appropriate rate for that family and that household.
So does that apply as well to families that are looking to lower their costs? I mean, because you have different fee levels depending on their level of membership.
So you can have membership for all to reduce your membership rate. So it would be less than that $24.99 if you're doing it for a child. And then chances are, if they have qualified for that, they're qualifying for our scholarships. So the front desk folks will encourage them, if they haven't asked about it already, why don't you fill out our open door policy and get that information to us so we can process you guys for a scholarship. So then that reduces the fee as well. So then they not only just have the lower rate for after school, now it opens the door for lower rates for swimming lessons, to come to utilize the Y as a family if they choose to do a family membership. And it opens that continuity of care for camp as well.
So I'm just going to put it out there, because what I hear is that in order to, we have to join the Y in order to take advantage of the lower tuition. And when you look at the tuition rates, if you're a Y member, you've got a really good tuition rate. But when you start looking at the higher rate, it's comparable to the other facilities that you've shown here. Yet those other facilities have a lot of overhead because they're paying for their building, which the Y doesn't have because the Y is coming into our buildings and using our buildings. And I don't believe you pay a fee to the Milford Public Schools to use our buildings. You're just coming in and providing this service. Correct. So, that's kind of just the elephant in the room.
Right.
And your program is, I know it's top notch. I know that you're providing, a really good experience for the students. There's other centers that also provide a good experience for the students. So, the experience itself, to me, isn't really the concern for me, because I know you're doing a good job. I know that, and I know that the kids are important. The kids are, but I also know that kids are in other programs and they're getting good care as well. So, I guess it really boils down to, what is it that makes the Y program so much more expensive if you're not a Y member? And I know that that's some of the objection that I hear from parents, because we do have these two different programs that are being offered, and one of them is considerably more expensive than the other.
Sure. If you're comparing us to the school system, I think the licensing has something to do with that piece of it. Also, the the ability to take on more of that administrative burden, I would presume is stretched over a wider cost,
That's a good point,
revenue basis with the school and the tax base and all that kind of stuff. So I imagine that has something to do with it. The YMCA looks at membership kind of as an entry point into a healthier lifestyle, and so it's kind of our philosophy that they become a Y member and they get more invested in what our health and wellness philosophies are, and youth development philosophies, and social responsibility, and they get to take advantage of all the other things that we offer. I hope that answers some of your questions. And like I said, a lot of them, a ton of these families have family memberships as well, not just youth memberships. And the fact that they can join as a family and spend family time at the Y, at the pool, or mom, dad work out and the kids are in babysitting, however that works, I think they see the value in that quite a bit.
I think there's a lot of families in Milford, though, that simply can't afford that. That's a luxury to them, to be able to do that. And they need quality, safe care for their children.
Sure.
And that's the bottom line.
Sure.
I found it interesting that you said 85% of the children within the child care program are already members of the Y. So when they're coming, current members. When they come in, are they already members, or they select? When they start in before and after school care, they've already taken out a membership, they're already Y members, or they're taking out the membership once they, maybe you can qualify that number.
Sure, yeah, no, I don't have the data, I don't have that data exactly, but a lot of the parents have.
Because I thought you said already members.
Yeah,
so
they're already members of their current, what we would call current member. So they're already in swim, like a lot of kids, start swimming around, preschool age, so they've already joined for swimming. A lot of them will have a sibling that's already at the Y in preschool or something like that. So I don't have the data. I don't have that data. It would be interesting to try and find out. I'm not sure how I would do it, but I don't have all that data.
Okay, all right. Well, it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. It was very eye-opening. I'm glad we were able to participate in this. Just want to make sure no other questions from board members. Ms. Federico?
I just forgot one question. Ms. Glennon, your question reminded me. On slide 9, where it talks about the cost of kindergarten and tutor time, Mrs. Glennon mentioned the additional cost for the building, and there's also transportation costs in those programs as well, right? They have to pick up the children at the schools and transport them back to their facility.
I believe they do.
Right.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. Our transportation costs are associated with our buses that pick the kids up and bring them back for swimming, or the middle school kids or the high school kids that are picked up, and the program is licensed at the Y property.
So with the elementary students, that's twice a month?
Yes, at least. Yeah.
Versus in the kindergarten program, it's every day?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
The only thing I would want to remind the board is why the Y is here, because one of the, I believe the commitments that the board would like to make is to be able to provide before and after school programming for any child who may want it. And is there a possibility of that occurring? And so those were the kinds of conversations we've begun. We have a long way to go, but I just wanted to remind the board that was the context for asking the Y to come.
Right, and the context was that the desire to have the equity across the district in terms of what was being offered. So it is important, I think, to this board that we can provide have some continuity, so that we have family members and in one school that they're getting a similar program as other schools are being offered. So I think that was part of it as well. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda has to do with a change in the professional learning and teacher evaluation plan. Each year, as all of you know, we are required by the state to submit to the state any revisions that we make to our teacher evaluation plan. And you've been through this before. There have been significant changes made in the last couple of years. This year, there is, it is a significant change, but on the other hand, it's one change. I'll talk to it a little bit, but Shannon Carlson, who is our supervisor for district improvement and oversees all of teacher and administrator evaluation, is here, and she can answer any questions that you may have. So, as it was explained in the agenda form that was attached, each year that we have had the plan in place, the plan has been in place 3 years, but we actually began it 4 years ago with the development of the instructional framework. We were ahead of where the state was. We've really made modifications to the plan toward wanting to contribute to the growth of teachers. That's really been the major driver in this. And we feel that we're to a point, since we have now been doing this fully for 3 years, that we would like to move to having a cycle in place for teacher evaluation rather than sort of the one-size-fits-all of every teacher, every year being observed 3 times a year. This year we introduced the professional growth opportunity in place of one, but it's still that the teachers are required to engage in a professional growth opportunity. They have to, write up, submit it. It's assessed and graded by the principal, and then there is, they have to then do a reflection as part of it. And we want to continue that, but we also looked at the idea of still everything sort of being so grounded in those observations and saying, is there merit to looking at, to giving teachers who are either highly effective or effective in their overall rating that they received, some opportunity to say, instead of having, again, the 2 or 3 traditional observations a year, that they would go on a cycle, and depending upon what year of the cycle would vary, and you have it here in red, how many observations they would engage in. And, Mrs. Carlson, I don't know if you want to add to that. I mean, there was a committee of teachers that really worked on this. They brought it forward.
I think something to keep in mind is we all know that multiple snapshots of teacher practice provides a more accurate picture of teacher performance. And all teachers are evaluated in the 4 categories: observation of teacher performance, parent feedback, whole school student learning, and student performance growth. And this evaluation cycle falls under that 40% of the observed teacher performance in practice. And the committee felt very strongly, as Dr. Fieser said, that it was time to move forward with this flexibility option, is what the state is calling it. It's a 3-year cycle. So overall, all 4 of the categories that the teacher is evaluated on, as an overall summative rating, if the teacher is highly effective or effective, then they qualify to participate in this cycle. And again, as Dr. Fieser said, the committee felt very strongly that we were at a place to move forward with this cycle.
Questions? Mr. Sadie?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to administration. For purpose of our voting later on, we go to page 29, is that accurate?
Yes.
And we're looking at the middle of what's described as tenured, highly effective, and then go down to a drop down second part of the paragraph, which is all red. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm just wondering why, when I was reading it a couple of times before, we start off with year 1, and it says the word minimum, and each one says minimum. Why are we having minimum at all?
I think the minimum was in there. The committee felt that that was important. If an administrator sees it where they would like to go in and get another observation on a teacher, they felt it was important to include minimum in there, just so we're not held to, we can only do 1 observation on a teacher, or we can only do 1 announced observation on a teacher. If we see trends and patterns where we'd like to go into a classroom again and observe that teacher, we have the flexibility to do that.
I would add to that if you would read minimum as minimum of 1 announced, 1 unannounced, and 1 professional growth, the state guidelines mandate that we have 3 ways in which to look at teachers in terms of this piece. That's part of the state requirements. So they're not saying that there has to be 3 observations. Initially, year 1, when they began, they did require the 3 observations. At this point, they're giving districts flexibility for how you define those 3 per year. And so that's also part of the minimum, from my understanding.
Yes. And that's why the state is actually calling it the flexibility option. And so the guidelines we're following are exactly from the state. Other districts are doing this in the state as well. So they wanted to start giving districts flexibility to utilize this instead of, as Dr. Fieser said, instead of sticking with the 2 announced, 1 unannounced, or 1 announced, 2 unannounced.
An additional question on this, through you, Madam Chair, to administration, does this affect teacher salary and pay raises and performance at any point?
It doesn't affect, it has nothing to do with salaries, pay raises.
Okay, but how about other performance? You know, because it breaks it down. I'm trying to figure out, why is it only here in the middle for tenured, highly effective, and not on any of the others? I can understand with the non-tenured.
These are the guidelines from the state that they give us. You have to be designated overall highly effective or effective and tenured in order to even qualify to be a part of the cycle. So the verbiage is directly from the Connecticut State Department of Education.
Thank you.
No problem.
And I would add the column to the right where it says tenured, highly effective. You can have a teacher in the system who is highly effective, but they're not able to participate in what's called the professional growth opportunity, and that's because you can only participate in the professional growth opportunity if your observations not only were rated as effective or highly effective, but within the observation itself, every one of the indicators have to be rated as effective or highly effective. So for example, lesson design, monitoring, expectations. There's different indicators that are rated within an observation, and then there's an overall. If any one of those is not effective or highly effective, they are not able to participate in the professional growth opportunity. Well, if they're not able to participate in the professional growth opportunity, then they cannot go on the cycle. So it's a high standard for teachers that would be on the cycle. Because it's saying, we really support flexibility, but the expectation is that you would have reached a threshold in order to be given that opportunity. I will say, just as an aside, not to justify any of this, but one of the things I think you should know is that Milford's approach to assessing teachers is rigorous, and it's more rigorous than a number of other districts. So our observation structure is very thorough. And there are, particularly for non-tenured teachers, there's demands up, in advance, and even tenured teachers. When we talk about an announced observation, there are requirements on the part of the teacher before they're ever even observed in terms of writing up in detail their lesson plan and answering a series of questions, etc. The write-up that we expect of our administrators is detailed. And the type of feedback that's to be given, et cetera. There are districts, this isn't a criticism, it's just something we have chosen not to do. There are districts that when they go into classrooms, they're using a checklist. So they have their list of indicators. Did the teacher meet this? Check, 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 check. We don't do that. We have nothing that's checked. It's all observation, gathering the evidence, and then writing it up. So. And then the other pieces that would be put in place, the professional growth opportunity that was introduced this year was rigorous. It required pieces on the part of teachers, and it required some also on the part of administrators. So what I'm saying to you is that if there's any thought that this is kind of weakening or lessening, it's not. But it is saying, we want to give teachers options to contribute to their own growth, where they are saying, gee, I'd like the opportunity to do this. I'd like to be able to work with 2 or 3 of my colleagues around this particular thing, or I'd like to do research toward this, or I'd like to, whatever, I mean, there may be a number of things that they may choose that they want to do, and it gives them an opportunity to do that in support of their own growth.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Weskiman?
Just following up on that, these observations form a part of the evaluation of a teacher,
right,
and could form a part of the summative evaluation, and could lead to a determination of effective or not, as the observation experience unfolds.
Yes,
so
it's
so
40%.
This is part of that evaluation of the teacher's performance.
It's the 40% of the pie. It's
Okay.
the observation of teacher performance and practice.
All right, and the one last question on year 4, you go back to cycle 1?
Yes.
I mean, it cycles back.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And some it could be moved off the cycle. They could be in year 2, and then at the end of year 2, for whatever reason, maybe they end up with a rating of approaching effective, they would be pulled off the cycle. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Other questions?
Mrs. Casey, are you shaking your head because you wish you could be a part of this?
I think she's got some teacher evaluation going on where she is.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, then, Mr. Sadie,
Thank you.
call for a motion on this.
I make a motion the Board of Education approve the change to Milford's professional learning to teacher effectiveness performance evaluation plan. For tenured teachers, teachers receive an overall rating of effective or highly effective to adopt the 3-year cycle found on page 29 of our packet for this evening.
For second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. So now what will happen is Mrs. Carlson will notify the state that you've approved, document that, and so then we're good to go.
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Carlson will now notify the state that the board has approved this, and we're good to go then for this new year. The next item on the agenda is an update on our work toward the reconfiguration and the redistricting. So when I provided an update at the June 8th board meeting, which was the last time I spoke to this, I shared with the board and the public that we had completed all student assignments to their schools, determined the number of classrooms at each grade level in every one of the schools, assigned all professional staff and paraprofessionals. I also shared that preparation for the moving was underway. Again, this was June 8th. And that library books were to be moved on June 13th. And the moving of classrooms would begin on June 20th. And I shared that parents had been notified about the dates for kindergarten orientation, as well as the grade 1 through 5 orientations that would take place in August. So here we are, amazingly so, 5 weeks later. And what I can tell you is that in the staffing area, besides everything that I shared with you in June, we've hired 6 elementary teachers. These were, if you remember, we knew we were going to have to hire additional teachers, so that has taken place. At the same time, we're continuing to monitor those hot spots. You remember with the enrollment, there were some highlighted sections in certain schools that we were monitoring because if they get bumped up, then we may have to hire an additional teacher. There hasn't been that since the June meeting. At the June meeting, if you remember, Mr. Cummings had, at that point, I believe it was a kindergarten section that had been increased. But between June 8th and now, we're still remaining stable. Regarding moving, I had shared in June that we needed to pack up 215 rooms to be moved into trailers. What I can tell you is that all has taken place, and actually probably was completed 2 to 3 weeks ago. And if just again, to just refresh your memories, there's 7 different kinds of moves that are taking place. There are two different kinds of internal moves, a grade change and a room change for a teacher, internal to a building. There's also no grade change, but a room change inside a building. Externally, there are teachers who are going to another building, no grade change, so they're going to the same grade. But the room, the wing, for example, may have been changed, so there's a move anyways for that classroom. There's also teachers who are making a grade change and again a room change, and then there's all the specialists, art, music, PE, et cetera, that may be moving. Different labels for all of those. But the good news is that the schools are completely empty as we speak, which, except for in gymnasiums, are filled because some of the internal furniture that was going to remain there was moved into the gym rather than put on trailers. So the schools are completely empty, which is allowing the custodians and maintenance folks, custodians, to do cleaning with everything literally out of classrooms. They can do cleaning so much faster, and meanwhile maintenance are doing some repairs to you know, things that need to be repaired in classrooms, you know, hallways or whatever it may be. Also, there is some abatement that's going on as we speak in 4 classrooms at Cap Penn Meadow. This is really floor tiles that would be replaced, and that's going on right now. There are some classrooms that are going to need cubbies because there's no cubbies in them. Those have been ordered. There are some classrooms that are going to need new cubbies because the ones that are in there are they need to be replaced. So that also, when those come in, those will obviously be installed. A week from today, the furniture that is in trailers in some of the schools will begin to be taken off the trailers and moved back into the buildings because the buildings will have been completely cleaned. Now, this is not every one of the 8 schools, but you know, there's progress being made so that by in a week there are some schools that literally the cleaning is completely finished, so furniture can start to be moved back into classrooms. And there's a whole schedule for this that Mr. Bradbury has. I can tell you in terms of technology, the way that the IT people are working is they're following the lead of Mr. Bradbury's schedule. So, you know, as he moved things out, they were moving things out. As he starts to free up rooms that are able to then be accessed for technology, they're in there. Or will be in there, starting to make sure that technology is set up. If you remember, one of the things that we are able to do for next year is to, in every one of the 3 through 5 classrooms, every one of those classrooms will have 9 Chromebooks. So those Chromebooks are being unpacked as we speak and bundled in you know, sets of 9, and there's cases that actually the computers will be in, so that those will be ready once the classrooms are opened up for that to be moved in. And then also things like smart boards, you know, and other kinds of if there's technology strips that need to be put, you know, into classrooms, et cetera. But IT is really on top of the needs there. In transportation, Durham is working on the bus runs, and a decision that has been made that we think is really positive is that parents are going to be notified differently this year around their bus assignments. What's going to happen is that the Power School communication that goes home to parents that has the teacher assignment for a student and room assignment on that same communication will be the bus route and time assignment. So it's there, and we can be assured, I mean, every parent is going to look at, well, what's my teacher? Who's my kid teacher? Well, and on that same communication will be then the bus information, which means we will not be using the postcards that we have sent home in the past, which is a small savings, but we won't need to do that because it'll all be on that sheet of paper, and they'll be notified all at the same time. They'll get all that information at the same time. We do recognize that there are some parents that are not registered with us through PowerSchool, and so we would make sure that there would be a written letter sent home with that information to those parents. And the last thing is some work has begun on the website to ensure that it is brought up to speed. So for example, all the faculty lists on the elementary schools have been taken down from the website because they're not accurate. And when they're when they're pretty close to being finalized, they'll be put back up. So then, you know, there's that piece on the website that you can win that'll, you know, say staff, and you can, you know, at least learn what building someone is in. And the other thing is, you know, things like ensuring that every one of the schools now say that they're K-5 schools, not K2, not 3-5, et cetera. Start and end times, that those are correct on the websites. And then what will happen is there'll also be some changes to the information that actually goes on the website for each of the schools itself. So that work has begun. So that's where we're at. I mean, we are, I would say we are in very good shape. And that's a tribute to so many people, the planning that they have done. It's just been enormous. I will say that Pat Bradbury and his staff, the custodians and people have just been phenomenal. And if you talk with any of the principals, they will tell you that they have just been tremendous to work with. Really done a yeoman's task. I don't know if you want to add anything, Mr. Richard Kelly.
No, I think Dr. Fieser summed it up where we are at this moment. But one thing that I would say is that having done this 5 or 6 years ago, we learned a tremendous amount. And we've been able to use those things to help this time around. And it's been invaluable, but it's massive when you just think of the number of boxes and trailers and number of teachers and everything that came out of Mr. Bradbury's office was color-coded. Every teacher got a set of labels with a color code as the 7 different scenarios, which basically said where that box was going to, the color for a school, and then within the school where it was going inside the school. So it was a tremendous amount of upfront work, and a lot of that was aided by having gone through it once before. And so we think, even though it's a tremendous amount of work, it's gone a lot smoother this time than it did before. As you would expect, you would learn from your experience, and we have.
And we know that there's going to be hitches. We know that there are some boxes that are going to go to the wrong place, particularly because there's been some teacher moves. So we know that. But we're already, you know, looking at that scenario. I should back up for a second and tell you that there is a committee that we formed immediately 1 week after you voted, March 23rd. The committee met. We've met every single Monday morning for upwards of 2 hours around this whole issue. And at the table are, you know, there's special ed, IT, communications, of course Pat Bradbury and Jim Riccitelli. There's food service, the business manager, library media. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out. But anyways, that are at this table, there's about 15 people. And as I said, every single Monday, faithfully, we have met. We say, where are we? You know, what are the issues, the immediate issues? What needs to be addressed? So, for example, knowing that next Monday we are going to be moving back into the school, beginning to move back into the schools, the question becomes, okay, so we start moving back in, and what if a teacher walks into her classroom and says, I'm supposed to have this, you know, bookcase, and it's not here, or I'm supposed to, whatever it may be. What do we do? Are we going to have teachers in 8 buildings, you know, emailing Pat Bradbury? So immediately, you know, the recommendation was, what if we came up, we pre-designed a form that principals would have, if teachers have a concern of any of that kind, they have to complete the form. It goes to the principal, and the principal determines is there legitimacy to this. or not. And then the principal would be emailing Mr. Bradbury. So that those are the 8 people that would be emailing him, not, 100 teachers, with that. Because the principal would know, okay, wait a second, is this legitimate? Maybe this person, had, 4 bookcases in his or her room last year, but really only 3 are the ones that are allotted to each teacher, something like that. We continue to meet, and the group has just been incredible in terms of anticipating issues, being of support to one another, and then also doing troubleshooting. So it's been good.
Good. Questions for Dr. Fieser or Mr. Riccitelli? Ms. Federico?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the administration. First of all, I appreciate the update and I appreciate the level of professionalism that you are. It sounds like your staff is showing in a very difficult time, and we understand and we appreciate their efforts. I have a couple questions that I may get these questions from the community, so I wanted to ask you first so I'm prepared to answer them. One is related to Meadowside, which is in my community, and I drive by it every day, and I see the parking lot is all torn up, and I'm glad that we're revamping the drop-off because there was a much-needed change. But I know that parents who drive by the school will be asking me and wondering, are we on schedule? Is Meadowside, because I'm sure they're one of the later ones to have their furniture moved in. So if you could just address that for me.
Sure. They were the first school to have their furniture moved out because we needed to get everything out before they could tear up the parking lot.
Okay.
And yes, we are on schedule. The project so far is going along almost, I don't want to jinx anything, but almost seamlessly at this point. It's going to be close. It's going to come down to the wire, but as I said to you at a previous meeting, we have contingency plans. We're doing it, the contractor's doing it in phases. So the parent drop-off will be the first completed, the bus drop-off will be the second completed, and the last is basically just the parking lot where the teachers will park. If we have to, we can have the teachers park across the street at the armory that the city owns now.
Yep.
And we would make provisions for making for a safe cross, across the street.
Okay.
We'd have a crossing guard or a police officer present if we needed to do that.
Okay.
But so far, it seems to be going very well, and we think we'll be on time.
Okay. Do you know the expectation? When would the furniture need to be moved back in? What's the...
Well, we can do that. We can move the furniture back in without the parking lot being ready, if we need to do that.
Okay. All right. I will keep my fingers crossed.
Yes.
Dr. Fieser, you had mentioned that on the websites, eventually the faculty info would be available. Do you have any sense of how far out that is? I know that's another question that parents will be asking.
I don't, I can certainly talk with Louis Giancola about that, who's one of the IT people who would oversee that. Part of the reluctance to, for example, put the lists up right now is just because of the movement. So for the sake of conversation, we just hired 6 teachers. 2 weeks ago, I think it was, we appointed 4 teacher leaders. All those teacher leaders were assigned to particular buildings as classroom teachers. They're now going to different buildings. And so then those classrooms opened up and there was further movement on the part of some teachers. So that's part of the issue of just trying to get to a point of where we're feeling pretty comfortable, not that it's 100%, but at least it's stable. But I know that, I don't know, but I'm assuming that this will be up before parents are notified, for example, of who their teacher is, and that we would have those lists.
Yeah, just trying to get an idea if we're 2 weeks out from that or 6 weeks out from that.
So I think I think this question was asked maybe last month again, and I think she pretty much gave the same answer, that she's not comfortable posting that information yet. So I think we just need to let them do their work and trust that she'll do it when she feels it's the appropriate time to do it.
Okay. Okay. One other question on the Power School change. I think that's a wonderful idea, and I think that a lot of parents will appreciate having that information all in the same place.
So there's an example of where IT worked with transportation.
Yeah.
You know, in coming up with that. And when we talked with Judy Messinagides, today, I said to her, is that just for this year? And she said, no. She said, we will be doing this now each year henceforth. So,
Okay.
yeah, they're really going to make that happen. But again, that was IT working side by side with transportation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to ask this question, as people may ask me. Is there any chance that waiting for the bus info could delay the teachers? I mean, I know you said we're doing it all at once, so.
Delay the teachers in...
We're not worried about Durham getting us the bus information later?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, we're not at all.
Okay.
They're not worried about that.
Okay.
No.
We've been pushing them to get it earlier this year, knowing that there's going to be more questions and the bus routes have to be completely rebuilt from where they've been. We've been pushing as soon as the decision was made by the board, we were getting them information as it was becoming available. So we don't think that there'll be any delay at all in getting that information. As a matter of fact, it may be there before the teachers, but we'll wait for that weekend.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Dr. Goldworkin?
I have two questions. One is the technology. Where is that being stored? Is that being stored in the trailers, or do you have that in like a temperature-controlled environment?
No, it's in temperature controlled. I'm not sure where a lot of it is. I know some of it is right here in Parsons.
Yeah. And some of it has been delivered to the schools and is being stored in the gymnasiums.
Okay,
So.
just want to make sure.
Yeah.
And the other question I had is, do you have an idea of the number of parents that aren't registered on the Power School? Or the percent?
It's very small.
Okay.
I don't have that number, but I asked the same thing when it was, when we just met, earlier today, and was told it's a really small number. That some people even may not have a computer at home, but they may use their work site. Some people might use somebody else's computer. It's a small number, but what will happen is whoever is not registered, automatically the letter will be sent, literally through the mail to them at home.
Yeah, if it's possible to get the information to the board in terms of the...
Like how many are not registered?
Yeah, that would be...
Sure, we can do that.
Important. Thank you.
We also know, Mr. Giancola was talking today that he knows there'll be slews of parents who are going to forget their password because they haven't had to go on. So they're already, setting up, so what they're going to do is stagger one day, the first day, all the elementary information will go home. Second day, all the middle school information will go home. Third day, the high school. And part of that is just said, okay, if they get 500 phone calls the first day, they can handle all of those, what's your password, et cetera, kind of thing. Yeah. Hopefully they won't get 500, but.
Yeah. They don't have an automated way to get their passwords reset like you do in most.
I don't know. I don't know. But they're on top of it, trust me. They're on top of it.
Did you have a question?
I just, in general concern, how's Mr. Bradbury holding up these days?
We let him play golf once this summer.
That's pretty nice.
Any further questions? Okay. Thank you for the update, Dr. Fieser.
And the next item on the agenda is the end-of-year financial report. Mr. Chicone?
Thank you, Dr. Fieser, Mrs. Glenn, and members of the board. As you well know, we come to you quarterly with a budget report, and we're at the end of the year, which of course is the end of the fourth quarter. This is the final one for the 14-15 school year. I do want to bring to your attention Mr. Sadi Hawk thought that there was a typographical error on the expenditure summary report in the top left-hand column, or on the top left-hand of the report. It says that it's for 7/1/14 through 6/30/16, and of course that should be 6/30/15.
Which page is that?
Page 32.
32?
The date, probably left-hand corner.
Thank you. And so I just At this point where we are, you can see that the budget is balanced, except for those items that are in the second to last column entitled Available Balance. And you'll see either a positive number or a negative number, and those correspond to the transfer requests that we're making in the second half of this item on the agenda. So as we've been going through each year, the big driver this year has been the number of teacher retirements that took place last year, which then affects how much money needs to be paid out in wages this year, coupled with the lower number of retirements in this fiscal year. And so just refreshing your memory, and it's in your package, but normally we budget for 18 teacher retirements. Last year we received 28, which means that there was more money in this year's budget that had to be paid out for salaries because of the turnover savings. In this fiscal year, 14-15, where we budgeted for 18 retirements, we only have 9 retirements. And so that's less money that has to be paid out in severance. And so between the two, that's the driver of the surplus, the overall surplus in this year's budget. As I said to you last month, and probably months before, this is an anomaly. If you take the 2-year average of 28 one year and 9 the next year, it's the average of 18. We expect that we'll get back on that average again. The one thing that I would point out is these two things translated to surplus this year. We're watching the budget already for 15-16 very closely because of the fact that we only had 9 retirements. We have to be really careful, and we'll be watching extra cautiously as we go into this fiscal year. But having said all that, the items that we're recommending that you transfer are listed on page, thank you, on page 36. And the explanations are there. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on any of those. And we're requesting that you transfer them to those items on page 37. With that vote, your budget will be balanced. You will have met your statutory responsibility of having a balanced budget. I think with that, I'll be quiet and answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Ms. Federico?
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Richatelli, I have one question.
Sure.
On the natural gas line, where it talks about additional expense due to the expansion at East Shore Middle School, as you know, on the Permanent Schools Committee, we've been discussing some issues with the controls system for the HVAC units, and the commissioning has not been completed yet, and it sounds like the system might not really be optimized. Could any of this increase be attributed to that and not just the expansion itself?
I think there's a portion of it that is attributable to it because we're not reaching maximum efficiency where we should be reaching at this point. Once those systems are all balanced, we should be reaching maximum efficiency. But I don't think that's the major driver. It's just it's a matter of we added 1/3 of the space to that building. We added 35%. The building is 35% bigger than it was 2 years ago when we started, and so we're heating a lot more. We have a lot more electricity, especially the air conditioning that's in the new wing. And so it's taking us a couple of years to figure out exactly where our utilities are going to be at East Shore. And we have to maximize our efficiency. But so I think that there's probably some piece of it in here that's attributable to it, not a huge portion of it.
Okay. Is there any way we could recoup that from the contractor?
Probably not.
Okay.
I don't know how we would even isolate that, to be honest with you. But you know from your experience already on the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee how difficult it is to prove that, you know, that these dollars were as a result of the mechanicals not being completely balanced at this point.
Okay.
It would be difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Overall, though, I think that it's the three items that I talked about here, that East Shore, the added square footage, the severe cold winter that we had this past year, and the overall increase in natural gas prices. Those are the three drivers of this, and we think we'll get back closer to where we've been once we have, because now we have 2 years of experience there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Whiskeyman?
Through you, Madam Chair, this brings to mind for the current year's 15-16 budget. Do we anticipate the expenditures in things like natural gas to be within the budgeted? Because we made that budget a year ago.
Right.
And I'm just thinking that we might have undershot that a little bit in our expectation about what this year's expenditures might be. When you get an opportunity to take a look at those projections to just see how we're doing, perhaps in September or October, we'll be able to have an anticipation of how that's beginning to shape up.
We will, and actually, you're absolutely right. Sometimes we're making decisions on these budgetary items 18 months before they actually are expended. But we try to anticipate those things, and we knew that we were off on our number for East Shore, so we bumped that up. If you look in this year's budget, that number for East Shore is up. We try to adjust where we.
Well, it's just that, you know, because of all these various different factors coming together this year, could turn into be a little bit tight this coming.
Exactly.
This year.
Yep.
Okay.
We do get our quarterly budget reports as well.
Right.
We can look at.
We can take a look.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Sadi.
Thank you. Make a motion the Board of Education approve administration's recommended 2014-2015 final budget transfers found on page 36 or 37 of this packet, totaling $306,483.22.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Bias. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Human Resources Report, and Mrs. Kapasna is not here, so I'm going to give the report. I will tell you that Mrs. Kapasna is with her daughter Kelsey, who was our student rep there at a 4-day orientation at Boston College. Kelsey was accepted into the Honors Business Program at BC, so that's where she's at. So this is really her report. So I had said that there were 6 new teachers hired. I'm not sure they've been signed, sealed, and delivered, you know, with respect to contracts. So what she indicated is that we've hired 12 new teachers so far and have 10 more coming in for final interviews. I think those 10 include the 6 who actually have had the final interviews, but they, in the sense of they've already been observed doing their demonstration lessons, etc., and I believe have been offered the positions but have not been finalized through HR. And so hopefully we will have 22 new hires by the end of the month. These are teachers. Areas of potential concern with filling the positions are the behaviorist and also a speech-language pathologist position. Such a huge shortage in both areas. Mrs. Kelleher was talking just this morning about her real concern about filling those positions. There may be a question about the school nurse posting. We actually don't hire the nurse. That's hired under the city health department. But as a courtesy to the city, we post it, but we steer the applicants to Mrs. Joseph, the Director of Public Health. We have 2 finalists that were for administrative positions. What I should say is that we have 2 positions for which we have finalists that we're going to be engaged in a second round of interviews. And that is the Director of Pupil Services as well as Principal of West Shore Middle School. So those interviews, will be going on this week, and then, there's, I always do another round of interviews with candidates. What Mrs. Capanza said is that although it's been extremely busy overall, she feels that we're off to a strong start for hiring for September. Lots and lots of hiring, but it's mid-July, and we've already filled lots of positions, which is really, really good. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if I'm able to, that board members may have.
Questions? Mr. Riskman?
When we were discussing some of the changes with the redistricting, there were a number of positions at the high school and middle schools that may have been eliminated as part of the process. Some of the teachers, I believe, were given the opportunity to accept positions at the elementary level if they were qualified. Do we have any individuals adversely affected by downsizing in the particular area who have not been placed or found positions elsewhere?
No, we have no layoffs, official layoffs, which was really fortunate. For all the movement that took place, no one lost his or her position.
Very good. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. So does that conclude your report?
It does conclude my report.
Very good. Okay, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Sadi.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I make a motion, Board of Education, approve the consent agenda items, which would be number 1, the disbursement report, and number 2, consideration of minutes of the June 8th, 2015 business meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, I'm sorry. She seconded it. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. We have no new business on the agenda tonight, so we'll move on to board comment. Any board members care to make a board comment this evening? Yes, Mr. DeGrego.
I want to make one. I wasn't at the last meeting due to my class graduating. I wanted to say it back in April and I forgot. The play that they had at Foreign High School. That play was second to none. It was in the middle of winter, and I never got a chance to say to the Foreign High School students.
Hairspray one? Hairspray?
Hairspray. I haven't seen a performance that well performed since I saw Annie on Broadway in 1983. That was some performance. I just had to say it. I never got a chance to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment?
Yes, through you to Mr. DeGrego. Is that why you're still sporting the hairspray look?
That's because that was from my play, Widow's Paradise, put on by the Milford Irish Heritage Society last week. And I played Harry Bradshaw.
Any other board comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Sadi's made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Yes. Mr. Tobias is seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
John wants to know something.
So, listen.
Next Monday.